I worked as Donald Trump's personal security until I discovered the reptilian cult he kept hidden. Before we start, I need you to do something for me. Comment right now where you're listening to this. Your bedroom, your car, walking your dog, doesn't matter. Just tell me, because if this recording disappears in the next 24 hours, and there's a very real chance it will, I need to know that somebody, somewhere, heard what I'm about to tell you. I need to know I didn't risk everything for nothing. My name is Marcus Webb, 34 years old, ex-Marine, 8 years of service, 3 tours in Afghanistan. After that, I did 3 years with the Secret Service before going private sector. And 6 months ago, I took a job that I thought would set my family up for life. Instead, it destroyed everything I thought I knew about reality. I'm recording this from a rest stop bathroom somewhere in Kentucky, or maybe Tennessee. I've been driving for 11 hours straight, and I'm losing track. My hands are shaking so bad I can barely hold this phone steady. There are sirens in the distance, getting closer, and I don't have much time. If you're hearing this, I'm probably already gone. Not dead, well, maybe dead, but more likely disappeared, erased. The kind of disappeared where your family gets a letter saying you had a breakdown, or you were involved in something illegal, or you just walked away. The kind where people stop asking questions after a few months. That's how they do it. I know because I've seen the protocol. I've seen the paperwork. I've seen what happens to people who see what I saw and try to tell someone about it. But I can't stay quiet. I have 2 kids. Tyler is 7, Madison just turned 5, and if I don't put this out there, if I don't make sure somebody knows the truth, then what kind of father am I? What kind of man am I? So yeah, I'm scared. I'm terrified. But I'm also a Marine, and Marines don't leave people in the dark when there's a threat they need to know about. Consider this your threat assessment briefing. Here's what you need to know about me before I tell you what happened. I'm not some conspiracy nut. I never was. Before all this, if you'd asked me about reptilians or lizard people or whatever you want to call them, I would have laughed in your face. I would have told you to get off the internet and go outside. I voted twice for Obama, once for Trump, and I didn't even vote in the last election because I was tired of all the circus. I'm the guy who rolls his eyes at ancient aliens. I'm the guy who thinks most politicians are just corrupt humans, not some interdimensional demons. Or at least, I was that guy. 6 months ago, I would have bet my life that the wildest conspiracy theory out there was still just fiction. Just entertainment for people with too much time on their hands. Now I know different. Now I know that some of those crazy people on the internet weren't crazy at all. They were just the only ones paying attention. I'm pragmatic. That's what made me good at my job. In the Marines, I was the guy who double-checked the intel, who questioned the mission briefing when something didn't add up, who kept his squad alive because I didn't take anything at face value. In the Secret Service, same thing. I ran the scenarios. I looked for the threats nobody else saw. I was paranoid in the best possible way, the way that keeps protectees alive. So when I took this private security job, I went in with the same mindset. Trust nothing. Verify everything. Watch for patterns. That mindset is the only reason I'm still alive right now. It's also the reason I can't go home. Because the pattern I found, Jesus Christ, the pattern I found goes so deep that I don't even know where the bottom is. And the people at the top of it, they're not people at all. Let me back up. 6 months ago, I was living in Virginia with my wife Sarah and our 2 kids. We had a nice house, nothing fancy, but the mortgage was killing us. Sarah was working as a nurse, pulling night shifts, and I was doing private security for some tech executive who treated me like furniture. The pay was okay, but not great. We were getting by, but just barely. Tyler needed braces. Madison's preschool was expensive. We had 2 car payments and credit card debt from when I was between jobs after leaving the service. You know how it is, or maybe you don't, but trust me, it's stressful. So when I got a call from a private security firm I'd never heard of, offering me almost $500,000 a year, I thought it was spam. I almost hung up. The woman on the phone was professional, cold, efficient. She knew my service record. She knew I'd worked Secret Service. She said her client was looking for someone with discretion and competence for a long-term personal security position. The money got my attention, but what really hooked me was when she mentioned the client's name. I can't tell you exactly how she phrased it. They record these calls, and I signed enough NDAs to bury a small country. But let's just say it was a name you'd recognize. A name that's been all over the news for the last decade. At first, I thought it was a prank. Then she sent me a formal offer letter on official letterhead with a security clearance verification form attached. That's when I knew it was real. The vetting process took 3 weeks. Background checks that went deeper than anything the Secret Service ever did. Financial records, social media, interviews with people I hadn't talked to in 10 years. They flew me to 3 different cities for in-person interviews. And then came the polygraph. Standard questions at first. Any foreign contacts, any criminal history, any drug use. Then the weird ones started. Do you believe you are alone in the universe? That was one of them. I remember it specifically because the examiner's face didn't move when he asked it. No expression, just staring at the readout from the machine while I answered. I said no, because statistically, it seemed unlikely. He wrote something down and moved on. Have you ever witnessed something you couldn't explain through conventional means? I said no to that too, because at that point, I hadn't. Would you be willing to maintain absolute confidentiality about matters of national security, even if you believed public disclosure served the greater good? That one made me pause. But I'd been in the military. I'd been in the service. I understood compartmentalization. I said yes. They approved me 2 days later. The salary was $450,000 a year, plus housing allowance, full benefits, and a signing bonus that paid off every dollar of debt we had. Sarah cried when I told her, happy tears. She said we were finally going to be okay. I started the job on a Tuesday in April. The details of where and who don't matter. Those NDAs I mentioned aren't just for show. And even now, even with everything that's happened, some part of my training tells me to protect operational security. Stupid, I know. I'm about to tell you that lizard people are real, and I'm worried about legal liability. But old habits die hard, and maybe some part of me still hopes I'm wrong about all this. Maybe some part of me hopes this is all just stress-induced psychosis and I'll wake up in a hospital bed with Sarah holding my hand. Anyway, the first few weeks were exactly what you'd expect. Early mornings, late nights, standing outside doors while boring meetings happened inside. I coordinated with other security personnel, ran threat assessments, checked perimeters. It was professional. It was normal. My principal was exactly like you'd expect from watching him on TV. Loud, opinionated, obsessed with ratings and crowd sizes and what people were saying about him on cable news. Nothing reptilian about him. Nothing strange at all. For almost 6 weeks, it was the easiest money I'd ever made. I was home on weekends. Tyler's braces got scheduled. Madison started taking ballet classes. Sarah cut back to 3 shifts a week. We were talking about a real vacation, maybe Disney World. I remember thinking I'd finally made it, you know. I'd finally found the job that was going to let us live instead of just survive. I should have known better. I should have remembered that, in my experience, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. The first weird thing happened on a Thursday night in late May. I'd been on the job for about 6 weeks at that point, and I'd settled into a routine. I knew the schedule, knew the patterns, knew which meetings were important and which were just photo ops. But that Thursday, everything changed. I was told to stay outside, not just outside the room, outside the entire wing. Family matter, they said. Private time. That had never happened before. In 6 weeks, I'd been with my principal every single moment he was awake. That was the job. But that night, I watched him walk down a hallway with 6 other people I'd never seen before, and the door closed behind them. I stood there for 3 hours. Nobody came out. No sounds from inside. Nothing. Just me, standing in an empty hallway, listening to the air conditioning hum. When they finally emerged, something was different. I can't explain it exactly. It wasn't anything I could point to, nothing obvious. But every instinct I'd developed over 8 years in combat zones started screaming at me. The way they moved, the way they looked at me, like I was a bug they'd just noticed on the wall. My principal nodded at me, said, "Long night," in a voice that sounded just slightly off, and walked away. The other 6 followed him. I watched them go, and for the first time since taking this job, I felt afraid, not concerned, not cautious, afraid. That's when it started. That's when everything I thought I knew began to fall apart. And that's when I made the biggest mistake of my life. I started paying attention. Let me take you back to where this actually started. February 14th, Valentine's Day. I remember because Sarah was pissed at me for forgetting to make dinner reservations, and I was sitting in our kitchen at 11 a.m. trying to find somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't fully booked. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I don't answer those, but I was distracted and frustrated, so I picked up. "Is this Marcus Webb?" A woman's voice. Professional. Cold. The kind of voice that doesn't waste words. I almost hung up thinking it was a spam call about my car's extended warranty, but something made me stay on the line. "Yes, who's this?" She didn't answer my question. Instead, she said, "I'm calling on behalf of a private security firm. We've reviewed your service record and your time with the Secret Service. We have a client who requires someone with your specific skill set." I sat up straighter. In the security world, you don't get calls like this unless someone's done serious homework on you. "What client?" I asked. "What position?" She was smooth. Didn't give me anything solid at first, just enough to keep me interested. "The client prefers to remain anonymous until we've completed preliminary vetting. The position is personal security, long-term assignment, high-level discretion required. The compensation package starts at $450,000 annually with full benefits, housing allowance, and a signing bonus." I actually laughed. Not because I didn't believe her, but because that number was so far beyond anything I'd ever made that it sounded fictional. I was making $87,000 a year, babysitting a tech executive who spent most of his time in Zoom meetings. This was more than 5 times that. That's a significant offer," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "What's the catch?" "There's always a catch. Always." She paused for maybe 2 seconds, then said, "The catch is that if you accept this position, your life will no longer be entirely your own. You'll sign non-disclosure agreements that will follow you for the rest of your life. You'll be on call 24/7, and you'll see things that you'll never be able to talk about with anyone, including your family." That should have been a red flag. Looking back now, that should have been the moment I said no thank you and hung up. But here's the thing about being in debt. Real debt. The kind that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. doing math in your head. It makes you rationalize things you wouldn't normally rationalize. I thought about Tyler needing braces. I thought about Madison's preschool tuition. I thought about Sarah working night shifts at the hospital, coming home exhausted, barely seeing the kids. I thought about our credit card statements and our mortgage and the slow, grinding stress that had been eating away at our marriage for 2 years. And I thought, how bad could it really be? I'd been in the Secret Service. I'd protected foreign dignitaries and politicians. I knew how to keep my mouth shut. "I'd need to discuss it with my wife," I said. The woman on the phone didn't miss a beat. "Of course. I'll send you a preliminary information packet via encrypted email. Review it with your wife. If you're interested in proceeding, respond within 48 hours. After that, the offer expires, and we move to our next candidate." The email arrived 10 minutes later. When I opened it, the first thing I saw was the letterhead. A security firm I'd never heard of, but the design was professional, expensive looking. The second thing I saw was the name of the client. I can't tell you exactly how it was phrased in the document, but let's just say it was a name that's been in the news constantly for the last decade. A name that about half the country loves and the other half hates. A name that, whether you like him or not, you definitely recognize. My first thought was that it was a joke. My second thought was that if it was real, this was either going to be the best decision of my life or the worst. I called Sarah at work. She was on break, and I could hear the hospital sounds in the background, beeps and announcements and that specific echo that hospitals have. "You're not going to believe the phone call I just got," I said. I told her everything, the money, the client, the NDAs, the whole package. There was a long silence on the other end. Then she said, "Marcus, that's more than double what we make combined." "I know. That's life-changing money. I know." We talked for another 20 minutes. Sarah's practical, more practical than me, honestly, and she asked all the right questions. What were the risks? How long was the contract? What happened if I wanted out? Could we afford to turn it down? That last question hung in the air between us. We both knew the answer. We couldn't afford to turn it down. Not really. Not with our financial situation. "Do it," she finally said. "Do the vetting process. See if it's real. If it feels wrong at any point, you walk away. But Marcus, we need this." She was right. We did need it. So I responded to the email that night, and within 24 hours, I had a phone call scheduling my first interview. That's when I learned what intensive vetting really means. Over the next 3 weeks, they picked apart my entire life. And I mean everything. They pulled my credit history, my military service records, my Secret Service background check. They interviewed my former commanding officers, my old squad mates, even people I'd worked with for like 6 months and barely remembered. They flew me to Washington, D.C. for the first in-person interview. I met with 3 people in a conference room in an office building that had no company name on the directory. They asked me about my time in Afghanistan, specific operations, specific decisions I'd made under pressure. They asked about my time in the Secret Service, protocols I'd followed, threats I'd identified, how I handled stress. Then they asked about my family. "Your wife works night shifts at a hospital," one of them said, reading from a tablet. "How does that affect your availability?" "She's flexible," I said. "We'd make it work. Your son is 7, your daughter is 5. Who handles childcare when you're both working?" I explained that Sarah's mother lived 20 minutes away, that we had a good support system. They wrote things down. No expressions on their faces, just clinical, like they were processing data. After 2 hours, they thanked me and said someone would be in touch. I flew home that night not knowing if I'd passed or failed. The second interview was in New York. Different people, same sterile conference room energy. This time they went deeper into my political beliefs, my social media history, my finances. "You voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012, one of them said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. "And you voted for Trump in 2016. "Yes, but not in 2020. "Why?" I shrugged. Honestly, I was tired of the whole circus. Didn't feel like either candidate was worth standing in line for. The interviewer stared at me for a long moment, then nodded and moved on. They asked about my debt, my spending habits, whether I gambled. They asked if I'd ever been blackmailed or compromised in any way. They asked if I had any foreign contacts or family members living outside the US. By the end of that interview, I felt like they knew more about me than I knew about myself. "One more step," they said. "Polygraph. Denver, next Tuesday." I nodded. I'd done polygraphs before. I wasn't worried. I should have been. The polygraph was scheduled for 9 a.m. at a nondescript building in an industrial area of Denver. The examiner was a guy in his 50s, gray hair, dead eyes, the kind of person who's been doing this so long that nothing surprises him anymore. He hooked me up to the machine, blood pressure cuff, chest sensors, fingertip monitors, and started with the baseline questions. Name, age, address, all the stuff they already knew. Then the real questions started. "Have you ever compromised classified information?" "No." "Have you ever accepted money from a foreign government or entity?" "No." "Have you ever committed a crime that you were not caught for?" I hesitated on that one because, who hasn't? But I said no because nothing significant came to mind. He watched the readout, made a note, moved on. Then came the weird ones. "Do you believe you are alone in the universe?" I blinked. "Sorry, what?" He repeated it. No change in tone. "Do you believe you are alone in the universe?" I said no, because statistically it seemed impossible. The universe is too big. He wrote something down. "Have you ever witnessed something you couldn't explain through conventional means?" I thought about that for a second. I'd seen some strange stuff in Afghanistan. Lights in the sky, weird sounds in the desert at night, but nothing I couldn't rationalize away. "No," I said. He watched the machine, wrote something down. "Would you be willing to maintain absolute confidentiality about matters of national security, even if you believed public disclosure served the greater good?" That one gave me pause. It was a trap question, kind of. If I said yes, I was admitting I'd prioritize secrecy over ethics. If I said no, I was admitting I'd break protocol if I thought I was right. But I'd been in the military. I'd been in the Secret Service. I understood compartmentalization. I understood that sometimes secrets exist for good reasons, even if you don't know what those reasons are. "Yes," I said. He stared at me for a long time, longer than the other questions. Then he nodded, made a note, and started unhooking me from the machine. "That's it?" I asked. "That's it," he said. "You'll hear back in 48 hours. I flew home that night feeling weird about the whole thing. Those questions, especially the one about being alone in the universe, kept rattling around in my head. Why would they ask that? What did it have to do with protecting a former president? I told myself it was just some psychological profiling thing, some way to gauge how I think, but it bothered me. 2 days later, I got the call. I'd been approved. They wanted me to fly to Florida the following week to sign the paperwork and start immediately. The signing bonus would hit my account within 24 hours of signing. I told Sarah that night. She cried. Happy tears. We sat in our kitchen and looked at our bank account on my phone, watching the balance like it was going to change any second. "We're going to be okay," she said. "We're finally going to be okay." I believed her. God, I actually believed her. I signed the NDAs the following Monday. 47 pages of legal language that basically said if I ever talked about anything I saw or heard, I could be sued into oblivion, criminally prosecuted, or both. I didn't read every word. I should have, but I was too focused on the number at the bottom of the contract, $450,000. I signed my name, shook hands with a lawyer I'd never see again, And just like that, my old life was over. I started the job on a Tuesday in April. They flew me down to Palm Beach the night before, put me up in a hotel about 10 minutes from Mar-a-Lago, and told me to be ready at 5 a.m. I didn't sleep much that first night. Combination of nerves and excitement and the weird, surreal feeling of knowing that in a few hours, I'd be working for one of the most famous people on the planet. I kept thinking about what Sarah had said before I left. Just do your job, keep your head down, and come home safe. Simple advice. Good advice. I should have followed it better. At 4:45 a.m., a black SUV picked me up from the hotel. The driver didn't say much, just confirmed my name and drove. We pulled up to Mar-a-Lago, right as the sun was starting to come up, and I got my first real look at the place. It's bigger than it looks in photos, more ornate, gold everywhere. The kind of place that screams money in a way that almost feels aggressive. I was met at a side entrance by the head of security, a guy named Derek, former Secret Service like me, probably in his mid-50s. He gave me the rundown, protocols, radio channels, emergency procedures, where I could and couldn't go. The security setup was professional. Better than professional, actually. They had cameras everywhere, motion sensors, multiple layers of perimeter security. Derek walked me through the whole system in about an hour, and I could tell these people took threats seriously. Your job is simple, he said. You're on personal detail. That means you're with him from the moment he wakes up until he goes to bed. You don't leave his side unless he explicitly tells you to. You don't engage in conversation unless he initiates it. You watch the room, you watch the people. You watch for anything that feels off. Clear? I nodded. It was exactly the same briefing I'd gotten in the Secret Service, just with fewer bureaucratic layers. Derek introduced me to the rest of the security team. About 8 guys total, all former military or law enforcement, all professional. No cowboys, no wannabe tough guys. Just competent people doing a job. That made me feel better. I'd worked with enough security teams to know that the personality of the team matters as much as the training. I met my principal for the first time at 7:15 a.m. in one of the dining rooms. He was eating breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, wheat toast, and watching Fox News on a TV mounted to the wall. Derek introduced me. Sir, this is Marcus Webb. He'll be on your personal detail starting today. Trump looked up from his eggs, sized me up for about 3 seconds, then nodded. Marines, right? I can always tell. You guys have a look. I was surprised he knew, but then I figured it was probably in the briefing they'd given him about me. Yes, sir, 8 years. Good. I like Marines. My father always said Marines are the toughest sons of bitches in the military. You married? Yes, sir. 2 kids. Good. Family men are loyal. Loyalty matters to me more than anything else. You'll do fine. And that was it. He went back to his eggs and his TV, and I took up position by the door. Welcome to the job. The first week was exactly what you'd expect. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., run through my own security checks, coordinate with the overnight team about anything that happened while I was off shift. By 6:30 a.m., I'd be posted outside his bedroom door waiting for him to wake up. Usually that happened around 7, sometimes earlier if he couldn't sleep. Then it was breakfast, phone calls, meetings, lunch, more meetings, dinner, more phone calls. The guy worked constantly. Say what you want about his politics, and trust me, I've heard it all. But he didn't stop moving. Every day was packed. I'd eat my meals standing up or in quick breaks between events. I'd check in with Sarah on the phone whenever I had 5 minutes. The work was exhausting but straightforward. No drama, no weirdness, just long hours of standing and watching, and occasionally coordinating with other security when we moved locations. He traveled a few times that first week, once to a golf course he owned nearby, once to a fundraiser dinner in Miami. Standard motorcade stuff. I felt like I was back in the service, just with better pay. The mundane details are what made it feel real, you know? Like this wasn't some movie version of presidential security. It was boring a lot of the time. I watched him eat the same breakfast almost every morning. Those scrambled eggs, bacon, wheat toast, sometimes a Diet Coke. I listened to him complain about coffee that wasn't hot enough, about TV anchors who said things he didn't like, about polls and ratings and who was being mean to him on Twitter. He'd have meetings with political people whose names you'd recognize, and I'd stand there listening to them talk about fundraising numbers and media strategy and state-level campaign stuff. None of it was interesting. None of it felt important. It was just the background noise of politics, money and messaging and ego management. I remember thinking, during one particularly boring dinner meeting about some congressman's re-election campaign, that this was the easiest $450,000 I'd ever make. Just stand here, look alert, don't let anyone shoot him. Simple. By the end of the second week, I'd fallen into a rhythm. I knew his schedule, knew his habits, knew which staffers he liked and which ones annoyed him. I knew he'd get irritated around 3 p.m. if he hadn't eaten lunch yet. I knew he'd stay up late watching cable news and tweeting, sometimes until 1 or 2 in the morning. I knew the names of his regular golf partners and which restaurants he liked for dinner. It became routine, comfortable even. I was finally able to relax a little bit, to stop being hyper-vigilant every second. That's the thing about security work. You have to find a sustainable level of awareness, or you'll burn out in a month. You can't operate at DEFCON 1 for 12 hours a day, every day. So you learn to identify what's normal, and then you watch for deviations from normal. The first 2 weeks taught me what normal looked like, and for those 2 weeks everything was completely, utterly normal. I'd FaceTime with Sarah and the kids every night before they went to bed. Tyler would tell me about school, about his friends, about some video game he was playing. Madison would just want to show me her toys and tell me she missed me. Sarah would ask how the job was going, and I'd tell her it was fine. Boring, actually, which was good. Boring means safe, she'd say. She was right. Boring was exactly what we wanted. I'd wire money home every week, and we'd watch our bank account grow. Sarah paid off 2 credit cards in the first month. We started talking about a real vacation. Not just a weekend somewhere, but like 2 weeks. Maybe Hawaii or Europe. The kids could miss some school. We'd never done anything like that before. The job was giving us options we'd never had. I remember feeling grateful. Actually grateful. Like I'd finally caught a break after years of just grinding through life. I should have known it wouldn't last. The first strange thing happened on a Thursday night, late May. I'd been on the job for about 6 weeks at that point. It was around 10 p.m., and I was expecting a quiet end to the day. Trump usually wound down around that time, watched some TV, made some calls, then went to bed by midnight. But that night, Derek pulled me aside in the hallway and said, "You're done for the night. Head back to your quarters." I looked at him confused. "Sir, my shift doesn't end until he's in bed." "I know, but he's requested privacy for the rest of the evening. Family matter." That had never happened before. Not once in 6 weeks. I was supposed to be with him 24/7 except when he was sleeping. That was the whole point of personal detail. "Is there a security concern I should know about?" I asked. Derek's face didn't change. "No concern, just privacy. Head back to quarters. You'll resume at 600 tomorrow." It wasn't a suggestion. I nodded and walked away, but something felt off. I made it about halfway down the hallway before I stopped and looked back. From where I was standing, I could see the entrance to the private wing, the section of Mar-a-Lago where his personal quarters were, where he held smaller, more intimate meetings. As I watched, I saw 6 people I'd never seen before walking toward that entrance. 3 men, 3 women, all dressed formally. Business attire, but expensive. The kind of expensive that doesn't try to look expensive, if that makes sense. No one was escorting them, no security checks. They just walked in like they owned the place. I made a mental note of what they looked like, professional habit, then headed to my quarters like I'd been told. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not dangerous wrong, just wrong, like a picture hanging slightly crooked on a wall. You might not notice it consciously, but your brain knows something's off. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about those 6 people, about the way Derek had dismissed me so quickly, about the fact that in 6 weeks of working this job, nothing like this had ever happened before. At 6 a.m., I was back on duty like nothing had happened. Trump came out of his quarters at his usual time, had his usual breakfast, started his usual routine. I watched him carefully, looking for anything different. His mood, his energy, the way he moved. Everything seemed normal. But when he looked at me that morning, just for a second, just a quick glance while he was drinking his coffee, something in his expression made my skin crawl. Not hostile, not suspicious, just aware. Like he was seeing me for the first time, really seeing me, and measuring me against some standard I didn't understand. Then he looked away, back to his TV, and the moment passed. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself it was exactly what Derek said, a family matter, some private meeting that didn't concern me. But that moment, that look, stayed with me. It was the first crack in the normalcy, the first hint that maybe, just maybe, this job wasn't as straightforward as I thought. I didn't know it then, but that Thursday night was the beginning of everything. That was the night the pattern started. And once I started seeing the pattern, I couldn't unsee it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At that point, 6 weeks in, I was still telling myself everything was fine. I was still thinking about Hawaii and Tyler's braces and the credit cards we'd paid off. I was still grateful for the job, still thinking I'd finally made it. I had no idea what I'd actually signed up for, no idea what I was about to discover, and no idea that in less than 4 months, everything I thought I knew about reality would be completely destroyed. The second time it happened was 11 days later. Same thing, late night dismissal, family matter, told to return to quarters. This time I paid closer attention. I took a different route back, one that let me pass by more windows, more vantage points, and I saw them again. The same 6 people. I was sure of it. Same 3 men, same 3 women, walking into that private wing like they'd done it 1,000 times before. No hesitation, no looking around, just straight in. And again, no security escort, no one checking IDs or credentials. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. In the Secret Service, you learn that access control is everything. You don't just let people walk into secure areas because they look like they belong there. Everyone gets checked, every time, no exceptions. But these 6 people moved through Mar-a-Lago like the rules didn't apply to them, like they were above the security protocols that everyone else had to follow. I made it back to my quarters and pulled out my phone, started a note, described all 6 of them as best I could remember. Person 1, male, mid-50s, gray hair, expensive suit, moved with the confidence of someone used to power. I'd seen his face before, not in person, but in news articles. Tech CEO, one of those Silicon Valley guys who's worth about $40 billion and thinks he's going to save humanity by colonizing Mars. I won't say his name here, but if you follow tech news, you'd recognize him instantly. Person 2, male, late 60s, white hair, looked like someone's grandfather, but dressed like he owned half of Wall Street. I didn't recognize him, but the watch on his wrist probably cost more than my house. Person 3, male, 40s, dark hair, athletic build. This one moved differently than the others, more careful, more aware of his surroundings. Former military or intelligence, I'd bet money on it. Person 4, female, 30s, blonde, dressed like she'd just come from a corporate boardroom, carried herself with the kind of authority that made you pay attention when she walked into a room. Person 5, female, 50s, dark hair with gray streaks, elegant in that way that rich women seem to effortlessly achieve. Diamond earrings that caught the light. Person 6, female, 40s, red hair, sharp features, looked like she could cut you with a glance. I saved the descriptions and tried to sleep. Couldn't. My mind was running through scenarios, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe they were donors, big money people who wanted private meetings away from staff and press. That would explain the secrecy, the late hours, the lack of normal security protocols. Rich people get special treatment. I'd seen that plenty of times in the service. Or maybe they were advisors, some kind of kitchen cabinet that operated behind the scenes, giving counsel on things too sensitive for public consumption. That happened too. Politicians had their official teams and their unofficial teams. Nothing sinister about that, but neither explanation felt right. Something in my gut, that same instinct that had kept me alive in Helmand Province, was telling me this was different. I just didn't know how yet. Over the next 3 weeks, it happened 4 more times. Always late at night, always after 11 p.m., always the same 6 people, always lasting between 2 and 3 hours. I started keeping detailed notes. Not officially, God no, that would have gotten me fired instantly, but in a personal encrypted note on my phone. Date, time, duration, who I saw entering and leaving. I told myself it was just professional awareness, just good security practice to know who had access to my principal. But really, I was starting to investigate. And the more I watched, the more the pattern became obvious. These weren't random meetings. They were scheduled, regular, every 9 to 12 days like clockwork. And they always happened in the same place, the private wing, specifically a section that led to what I'd been told was wine storage in the basement level. I'd never been down there. That area was off limits to security unless specifically requested, which never happened. The meetings would start sometime between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., and they'd always last at least 2 hours. I started setting quiet alarms on my phone, waking myself up to watch from my quarters window, which had a partial view of the side entrance. Here's what made it weird. These people would arrive separately, never together. The tech billionaire, let's call him Person 1, would always arrive first, usually in a black limousine with tinted windows. About 20 minutes later, the others would show up in various vehicles. Town cars, SUVs, once even a taxi, which seemed bizarre for people who were clearly wealthy enough to afford better. They'd all go in through the same entrance, and exactly 2 to 3 hours later they'd leave. But here's the thing that really got my attention. Person 1, the tech billionaire, would leave differently than he arrived. 3 times I watched him walk out of Mar-a-Lago and head toward the helipad on the property. I'd hear the limousine drive away. I could see its taillights disappearing down the road. But then, nothing. No helicopter. I never heard a helicopter start up. Never saw lights in the sky. Never heard the distinctive sound of rotors spinning up and taking off. And I know helicopters. I've been extracted by helicopter in combat. That sound is unmistakable, especially at night when everything else is quiet. The first time it happened, I figured I'd just missed it somehow. Maybe I'd gone back to sleep, or maybe the wind was wrong and carried the sound away. The second time, I stayed awake specifically to listen. Watched person 1 walk toward the helipad at 2:47 a.m. Waited, listened, nothing. No helicopter sounds, no lights in the sky, just silence. The third time, I actually walked outside, stood in the garden area where I'd have a clear view of the helipad, watched him walk across the lawn in that direction, waited 15 minutes, nothing. No helicopter ever took off. So where the hell did he go? There was no other exit from that direction except through heavy brush, and eventually into a residential neighborhood. A billionaire in a suit wasn't hiking through bushes at 3 a.m. It didn't make sense. And that's when something in my training started screaming at me. In the military, we had a saying, if it doesn't make tactical sense, it's probably a trap. This wasn't a trap exactly, but it was something that violated logic. I started expanding my observations, watched not just who came and went, but how they moved, the way they walked, the way they interacted with each other on the rare occasions I saw them together. And I noticed something else that bothered me. They never talked. I mean, I'm sure they talked in the meetings. That's the whole point. But in the hallways, in the moments before and after, when normal people would make small talk or acknowledge each other, these 6 were silent. They'd pass each other and not even nod. Just walk by like strangers. That's not how powerful people behave. Powerful people network. They schmooze. They make connections because connections are currency in their world. But these 6 acted like they were trying very hard to pretend they didn't know each other whenever anyone else might be watching. It was theater. And not particularly good theater, once you knew what to look for. My notes got longer, more detailed. I started including observations about behavior, not just times and dates. Week 8 of the job, early June. Another late-night meeting. This time I wasn't dismissed to quarters. I was on the night shift, which meant I was stationed in the main security office monitoring cameras. Around 1:15 a.m., I watched on the monitors as all 6 entered through the side entrance. Standard pattern by now. But this time, one of the exterior cameras glitched for about 40 seconds. Just static, then back to normal. No big deal usually. Equipment glitches happen. But the timing bothered me. It glitched right when person 1 should have been walking past that camera toward the helipad area. I checked the logs. No other cameras had glitched that night. Just that one. Just at that exact moment. I pulled up the maintenance records. That camera had been serviced 2 weeks prior. New equipment, no issues reported. So why did it glitch at the exact moment that would have shown me where person 1 actually went? Coincidence? Maybe. But I was starting to not believe in coincidences anymore. I did something stupid after that shift ended. I went to the helipad, just walked over there in the early morning light, like I was doing a routine security sweep. Looked around. There was no helicopter there. No helicopter had been there. The grass wasn't disturbed by rotor wash. There was no fuel smell. No tire marks from a helicopter's landing gear. Nothing. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, trying to work it out in my head. A billionaire walks toward a helipad at 3 a.m. Security cameras glitch at the exact moment that would show where he goes. No helicopter ever appears or makes sound. So what actually happened? Occam's razor says the simplest explanation is usually correct, but the simplest explanation here was that he just disappeared, walked toward the helipad and vanished. And that wasn't possible. People don't vanish. So there had to be something I was missing. Some piece of information that would make it all make sense. An underground tunnel maybe. A car waiting in a different location. Something. But here's what really got under my skin. I couldn't ask anyone about it. Couldn't mention it to Derek or the other security guys without admitting I'd been watching these meetings, keeping notes. basically conducting an unauthorized investigation of my principal's private activities. That would get me fired instantly, and probably blackballed from ever working security again. The NDAs I'd signed weren't just about not talking to the press. They were about not asking questions, period. About seeing things and letting them go. About understanding that some activities were above my clearance level and staying in my lane. But I'm a Marine. Marines don't just follow orders blindly. We're taught to think critically, to question assumptions, to look for threats that others might miss. And every instinct I had was telling me that something about these meetings was wrong. Not wrong like illegal necessarily, just wrong like impossible. Like the physics of the situation didn't add up. Something in my training, something in my gut, something in the part of my brain that had kept me alive through 3 tours in a war zone was screaming at me. This doesn't make sense. This isn't normal. This is something else. I'm going to be honest with you. What I did next was stupid. It was a violation of every protocol I'd been trained to follow, every professional boundary I'd ever respected. If I'd been caught, I would have been fired immediately, possibly prosecuted for breach of contract, maybe worse, but I couldn't let it go. That's the thing about mysteries. Once they get under your skin, they itch, and this one was itching bad. I'd spent 3 weeks watching patterns, taking notes, trying to rationalize what I was seeing into something that made sense, and I couldn't. Every explanation I came up with had holes in it, so I made a decision. I was going to find out what was happening in that basement, not because I thought it was dangerous, not because I thought anyone was in trouble, but because I needed to know, because not knowing was driving me crazy, and because some part of me, the part that had gone through Quantico, that had worked protection details for foreign dignitaries, that had been trusted with classified information, believed I had a right to know what was happening in a building I was supposed to be securing. The opportunity came in mid-June during a scheduled maintenance window for the security system. Every 3 months, a contractor comes in to service the cameras, update software, test backup systems, all that technical stuff. It takes about 6 hours, and during that time, portions of the security network go offline in rolling intervals. It's coordinated carefully. You never take down an entire zone at once. You always maintain coverage, but there are brief windows, usually 5 to 10 minutes, where specific areas have reduced monitoring. I'd been studying the maintenance schedule for 2 weeks, waiting for the right window. The basement level, where the wine storage was located, would go into limited monitoring mode for approximately 8 minutes, while they updated the DVR system that handled those cameras. 8 minutes. That's what I had to work with. I volunteered to do a physical security sweep of the basement during that window. Told Derek it was good practice to verify the space when cameras were down. He nodded, didn't think twice about it. Why would he? I was the guy who followed protocols, who did things by the book, trusted. The maintenance window started at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Trump was in meetings all afternoon, boring political stuff, fundraising calls, nothing that needed my immediate attention. Derek had me rotate off his personal detail for the security sweep. Said I had 20 minutes to check the basement level and report back. I took the service elevator down. The descent felt longer than it should have, like I was going deeper than just 1 floor below ground level. When the doors opened, the first thing I noticed was the temperature. It was cold. Not refrigerator cold, but noticeably cooler than the rest of Mar-a-Lago, which was always kept at a comfortable 72 degrees. I checked my watch. It had a built-in thermometer, something I'd gotten used to using in the desert, where temperature fluctuations could indicate enemy activity. Down here it read 64 degrees, 8 degrees colder than upstairs. That's significant. That's not just poor climate control. That's intentional. Someone wanted this space cold. The second thing I noticed was the smell. Ozones. You know that sharp electric smell you get right after a lightning storm, or near high-voltage electrical equipment? That metallic tang in the air that makes your teeth feel weird? It was everywhere down here, strong enough that I wondered if there was an electrical problem, maybe faulty wiring or a transformer issue. But the lights were working fine. Everything seemed operational. So where was it coming from? I moved through the corridor slowly, every sense on high alert. The hallway was wide, well-maintained, lined with expensive wood paneling. This wasn't some forgotten storage area. This was finished space, designed to look good, designed to be used. My footsteps echoed slightly on the marble floor. The sound was wrong somehow. Too much reverb, like the space was bigger than it appeared. I passed a few doors, storage rooms, mechanical access. Nothing unusual. Then I reached the area that was supposed to be the wine cellar. According to the blueprints I'd studied during my initial security briefings, this was just storage. Racks of expensive wine, climate-controlled, nothing special. But when I opened the door, something felt off immediately. The wine cellar was real. There were bottles, hundreds of them, organized in wooden racks that probably cost more than most people's cars. But the dimensions were wrong. I'd looked at the blueprints. This room should have been 30 feet deep. But standing at the entrance, looking straight back, it only looked like 20, maybe 25 feet. Where were the other 5 to 10 feet? I walked into the room, started examining the walls, ran my hands along the wood paneling, looking for seams, inconsistencies, anything that would indicate false construction. And there, in the back left corner, hidden behind a wine rack that looked permanent, but actually had wheels on the bottom, I found it. A seam in the paneling. Perfectly fitted, almost invisible, but definitely there. I pulled the wine rack aside. It moved easily, like it was designed to be moved, and exposed what was behind it. A door, not a regular door. No handle, no visible hinges, just a smooth panel of dark metal with a small biometric scanner mounted at chest height. My heart was pounding now. This was it. This was what I'd been looking for. Proof that something unusual was happening down here. A hidden door, behind a false wall, protected by security that didn't exist anywhere else in the building. I looked at the scanner. Fingerprint reader, probably connected to a very limited access list. I had clearance for almost every door in Mar-a-Lago. My security credentials would open 90% of the locks in the building. But I knew without trying that this one wouldn't work. This was different. This was private. I pulled out my phone and took 3 quick photos. The door, the scanner, the wine rack. Evidence that this existed, even if I couldn't get through it. Then I heard something that made my blood go cold. Footsteps, coming from behind the door. Someone was on the other side, moving toward me. I froze for maybe 2 seconds, running calculations in my head. If that door opened right now, how would I explain being here? What possible excuse could I give for moving furniture and photographing hidden entrances? I made a decision in about half a second, pulled the wine rack back into position, moved quickly back toward the entrance of the wine cellar, pulled out my phone like I was checking messages. Casual, just a guy doing a security sweep, taking a break to look at his phone. The footsteps behind the wall stopped. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. The door didn't open. Maybe whoever was back there had heard me moving the rack, had decided to wait. Or maybe I'd imagined the footsteps entirely. Maybe it was pipes or air handlers or the building settling. Old buildings make noise. I was paranoid, reading threats into nothing. But I don't think I imagined it. I think someone was back there. I think someone knew I was in the wine cellar. And I think they made a decision not to confront me, at least not then. I finished my security sweep, checked the other rooms on the basement level, made notes about a faulty light fixture and a fire extinguisher that needed inspection. All normal security stuff. Reported back to Derek that everything looked good. He thanked me, told me to get back on personal detail. And that was it. I'd found the hidden door. I'd confirmed that something was behind it, but I still didn't know what. That night, lying in my quarters, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that door, about the biometric lock, about the footsteps I'd heard or imagined, about the fact that somewhere in Mar-a-Lago there was a space that didn't exist on any official blueprint, protected by security that most of the staff probably didn't even know about. What was back there? A panic room, maybe. Rich people had those. Or a vault for storing valuable documents or assets. That would make sense. That would be a normal, rational explanation. But the temperature bothered me. And the ozone smell bothered me. And the fact that those 6 people met every 9 to 12 days, always late at night, always for 2 to 3 hours, in a section of the building that led directly to this hidden space. That bothered me most of all. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photos I'd taken. The door looked almost organic in the dim lighting of the wine cellar, like it had grown there rather than been installed. The metal had a weird texture, almost scale-like, probably just the photo quality. Probably just the lighting. I started researching biometric locks, how they worked, how they could be bypassed, what level of security they represented. The one I'd seen was high-end, probably cost $10,000 or more, probably custom installed, probably connected to a very short list of authorized users. You don't put that kind of security on a wine cellar or a panic room. You put it on something that absolutely cannot be accessed by anyone except a very specific group of people. I thought about trying to hack it. I had some technical skills from my time in the military, and I knew people who could get around almost any security system. But that would require equipment I didn't have, time I couldn't spare without being noticed, and a level of risk that would almost certainly get me caught. No. If I was going to get through that door, I needed to do it legitimately. I needed authorization. Or I needed to be there when someone who had authorization was opening it. That's when the plan started forming in my head. It was risky. It was possibly career-ending. But it was the only way I was going to find out what was really going on. I would plant a camera. Not in the wine cellar itself. Too obvious. Too likely to be found during any kind of security sweep. But in the corridor leading to it. High up, hidden in one of the smoke detectors or air vents. Something that wouldn't be noticed unless you were specifically looking for it. I'd buy the equipment myself, something small and wireless that could transmit to my phone or laptop. I'd wait for the next meeting, which based on the pattern should happen in about 8 days, and I'd watch. I'd see who opened that door. I'd see what was behind it. And then I'd decide what to do with that information. It was a violation of privacy, possibly illegal, definitely grounds for termination if discovered. But I'd come too far to stop now. I needed to know. Not wanted to know. Needed to know. Because something in my gut was telling me that whatever was behind that door wasn't just rich people doing rich people things. It was something else. Something that explained the impossible helicopter, the strange behavior, the secrecy that went beyond normal privacy. Something that made all the pieces fit together. I just had to be patient and careful. Very, very careful. A week went by. I was working on getting the camera equipment. Nothing fancy, just a wireless micro camera the size of a button that I could hide in a smoke detector. Had to order it through a guy I knew from my Marine days who didn't ask questions. It was going to take another few days to arrive. In the meantime, I was watching, waiting, keeping up my normal routine while planning my next move. And then, something happened that changed everything. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't even in the basement. It was pure chance. The kind of coincidence that makes you wonder if the universe is trying to tell you something. It was a Tuesday morning, around 4 a.m. I was on early shift, had been up since 3:30, doing my usual security checks before Trump woke up. The building was quiet at that hour, just a skeleton crew of staff, a few security guys, the night cleaning team finishing up. I was walking past the service entrance, the one the staff used for deliveries and trash removal, when I saw something that caught my attention. A white van. Medical Waste Disposal Company logo on the side. 2 guys in company uniforms loading bags into the back. Nothing weird about that on the surface. Mar-a-Lago had medical staff on site. A doctor, a couple of nurses, for emergencies, or if Trump wasn't feeling well. Medical facilities generate medical waste. That waste has to be disposed of properly, completely normal, except for 2 things. First, the regular medical waste pickup wasn't scheduled until Thursday. I knew because I'd reviewed the vendor schedule just 2 days ago as part of my security duties. Second, these guys were loading bags from a service elevator that came up from the basement level, not from the medical office, which was on the 2nd floor, from the basement, where there were no medical facilities, where there was just wine storage and mechanical rooms, and that hidden door I'd found. I watched them for a minute, staying in the shadows. They worked quickly, efficiently, didn't talk to each other, loaded about 6 bags into the van, closed it up, and drove off. The whole thing took maybe 3 minutes. I checked my watch. 4:07 a.m. Most of the staff wouldn't arrive for another 2 hours. This was deliberate timing. Someone scheduled this pickup for when the fewest people would be around to notice. I made a decision right there. Next time that van came, and based on the pattern I'd been seeing, everything here ran on patterns. I was going to intercept it. I was going to see what was in those bags. It took me 4 days of getting up at 3:30 a.m. and watching that service entrance before they came back. Same van, same 2 guys, same routine. Pulled up at 4:03 a.m., went into the building through the service entrance, came back out 6 minutes later with bags from the basement elevator. But this time I was ready. I'd positioned myself in the service corridor, right by the elevator. Told the night security guy I was doing random patrol checks. Nothing suspicious about that, just good security practice. When the elevator doors opened and those 2 guys came out carrying the bags, I stepped out where they could see me. "Morning," I said, friendly but authoritative. "Need to do a random inspection, protocol." You could see the hesitation on their faces. Brief, but definitely there. Then the older guy, maybe 45, nodded. "Sure, no problem. What do you need?" I pointed at the bags. Just need to verify contents match the manifest. You have the paperwork? He did. Pulled out a clipboard. Showed me a disposal form. Everything looked official. Waste type, quantities, disposal method, all the right codes and stamps. Mind if I do a visual confirmation? I asked. That's when his expression changed. Not hostile, but careful. These are sealed biohazard bags. Once they're sealed, we're not supposed to open them until we're at the facility. I understand, I said, keeping my tone professional, but I have security protocols that override vendor protocols. I need to verify the contents. We stared at each other for maybe 10 seconds. He was calculating whether to push back, whether to call someone, whether to make this into a problem. I kept my face neutral, my posture relaxed but firm. Finally, he shrugged. Fine, but if any of this contaminates, it's on your authority. Understood, I said. He set one of the bags down, carefully opened the seal. The smell hit me immediately. Not rotting organic smell, not blood or bodily fluids. Something chemical, sharp, almost acidic, with an undertone of something sweet that made my stomach turn. He pulled back the top of the bag so I could see inside. Medical packaging, gauze, what looked like surgical gloves, standard stuff. Satisfied? He asked. I nodded, but I wasn't satisfied at all, because underneath the standard medical waste, I could see something else, something that didn't belong. What's that? I pointed at it. He looked down, and I saw something cross his face. Recognition, maybe worry. Synthetic materials, he said. Sometimes they use prosthetics for training, medical simulations, that kind of thing. Right, I said. I'll need to document that for the report. Can you pull it out so I can photograph it? Now he definitely didn't want to comply, but he was stuck. He'd already opened the bag, already admitted there were synthetic materials inside. If he refused now, it would look suspicious. He reached in carefully, pulled out what looked like a crumpled piece of flesh-colored material, held it up. Prosthetic skin, he said, for the medical training I mentioned. But the way he held it, carefully, like it might break or tear, that wasn't how you held rubber or silicone. I stepped closer, pulled out my phone like I was going to take a photo for my report. I'll need to examine it more closely, I said, reaching for it. He pulled it back slightly, then seemed to realize that would look even more suspicious. Handed it to me. Be careful with it. These are expensive. I took it, and the moment I touched it, I knew this wasn't any prosthetic I'd ever seen. It was warm. Not body temperature warm, but warmer than room temperature, like it had been heated recently. And the texture? Jesus. The texture was all wrong. It felt like skin. Not like synthetic skin. Not like the prosthetics I'd seen in military medical training. Like actual skin, but thicker somehow. More durable. I turned it over in my hands, examining it. One side was smooth, flesh-toned, with what looked like pores. The other side was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like looking at the inside of someone's body, but organized wrong. There were structures that looked vascular, branching patterns like blood vessels, but they were too uniform, too geometric. And there were small nodes, maybe the size of pencil erasers, distributed in a pattern I didn't recognize, connected by filaments that looked almost like circuits. What kind of medical training uses this? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Advanced surgical techniques, he said, taking it back from me. Reconstructive procedures. He stuffed it back in the bag, sealed it quickly. We really need to get this to the facility. Temperature-controlled disposal window. I nodded, stepped back. Thanks for your cooperation. Just doing my job. They loaded the bags in the van and left. And I stood there in that service corridor, my mind racing. Because that material, whatever it was, wasn't for medical training. Medical training dummies don't have warm, synthetic skin with vascular patterns on the inside. They don't have geometric node structures that look like circuit boards made of flesh. I'd seen combat injuries. I'd seen what the inside of the human body looks like when it's been torn open by shrapnel or bullets. And this was similar, but wrong. Engineered. Like someone had tried to recreate human tissue but didn't quite get it right. Or like they'd created something that was meant to look human from the outside, but served a completely different function underneath. I should have stopped there. I should have walked away, told myself it was experimental medical technology or some kind of classified research, and let it go. But I didn't. 3 days later, they came back. Same routine, same time. But this time, I was even more prepared. I'd brought a small Ziploc bag in my pocket. I'd positioned myself in the service corridor again, but this time, I told the night security guy I was checking a reported water leak in the basement. Gave myself a reason to be down there that had nothing to do with the medical waste pickup. When the disposal guys came up in the elevator, I was waiting in a storage room with the door cracked open. Watched them walk past carrying their bags. Waited until they were almost to the service exit. Then I moved. Quietly, quickly, Marine training taking over. They'd set the bags down by the door while they opened the van. I had maybe 30 seconds. I went to the last bag in the line, the one farthest from where they were standing, pulled a small utility knife from my pocket, made a 2-inch cut in the bag, just enough to reach inside. My hand touched something soft, folded. I grabbed a piece, not too much, just a sample, and shoved it in the Ziploc, sealed it, put it in my pocket. The whole thing took maybe 10 seconds. I was back in the storage room before they finished loading the van. My heart was pounding like I'd just been in a firefight. What I'd just done was theft, tampering with medical waste, probably a dozen different violations that could get me fired or arrested. But I had to know. I had to see what this material actually was. I waited until my shift ended at 6 a.m., then drove home. Sarah was already at work. Kids were at her mother's house. I had the place to myself. I went straight to the kitchen, put on latex gloves. I had a box under the sink left over from when I used to change my own oil, and opened the Ziploc bag, pulled out what I'd taken. It was about the size of my palm, maybe 6 inches by 4 inches, flesh-colored on one side, that weird internal structure on the other. I laid it on the kitchen counter and really looked at it for the first time in good lighting. And that's when I saw details I'd missed in the dim basement corridor. The external side wasn't just flesh-colored. It had texture, pores like I'd noticed before, but also what looked like very fine hair follicles. And when I looked closer, I could see variation in the pigmentation. Freckles, maybe, or age spots. Whoever made this had paid attention to detail. They'd tried to make it look like real skin down to a microscopic level. I turned it over. The internal side was worse. Those vascular patterns I'd seen before were more complex than I'd thought. They branched and connected in ways that looked almost fractal. And the nodes, there were 5 of them in the piece I'd taken, had small openings on one side. Ports, maybe. For what? I had no idea. I touched one of the vascular structures gently with my finger. It was soft, almost spongy, and when I pressed on it, I swear I felt it pulse. Just once, very faint, like there was pressure moving through it. But that was impossible. This thing wasn't connected to anything. It wasn't alive. It couldn't be alive. I pulled out my phone, took about 20 photos from different angles. Then I put the sample in a new Ziploc bag, wrote the date on it in permanent marker, and put it in the freezer behind a bag of frozen peas. Evidence. That's what this was now. Evidence of something, even if I didn't know what. I stood there in my kitchen for a long time, staring at that closed freezer door, thinking about what I'd found, thinking about that hidden door in the basement, thinking about those 6 people and their impossible meetings, and thinking about the fact that I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I should have stopped there. I should have thrown that sample away, gone back to work, collected my paycheck, and pretended I'd never seen anything unusual. I should have been a good soldier, followed orders, stayed in my lane, but I couldn't, because now I knew something was happening, something real, something physical, something that left behind evidence, and I had to know what it was. The camera equipment arrived on a Thursday, small package, unmarked, shipped to a P.O. box I'd rented specifically for this purpose. I picked it up during my lunch break, drove to an empty parking lot, and opened it in my car. Inside was exactly what I'd ordered, a wireless micro camera about the size of a thick button, maybe half an inch in diameter, black casing that would blend into dark surfaces. The guy I'd bought it from, let's call him Rodriguez, that wasn't his real name, but it's close enough, was someone I'd served with in Afghanistan. After he got out, he went into private security consulting, which is a polite way of saying he provided surveillance equipment to people who needed it and didn't ask questions. I'd called him 2 weeks earlier, told him I needed something small, wireless, and reliable. How small? He'd asked. Small enough to hide in a smoke detector. There was a pause on his end. You doing something legal, Webb? Define legal, I said. He'd laughed. That's what I thought. Give me 2 weeks. Cash only. And I never sold you anything. That's the thing about guys you served with. They understand operational necessity. They understand that sometimes you need to bend the rules to get things done. The camera came with a small instruction manual, battery that was supposed to last 72 hours on a single charge, and a wireless transmitter that would send encrypted video to an app on my phone or laptop. Range was about 300 feet through walls, more in open space. Resolution was decent, 1080p, which was better than most security cameras. Night vision capable. Motion activated or continuous recording. My choice. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes, reading through the instructions, making sure I understood how it worked. The installation was simple enough. The camera had a magnetic back, so it would stick to any metal surface. Smoke detectors had metal mounting plates. Perfect. The app was straightforward too. Download it, pair the camera via Bluetooth, set my recording preferences. Done. I tested it right there in the car, stuck the camera to the metal frame of my seat, walked 20 feet away, and checked the feed on my phone. Crystal clear. Even in the dim interior of my car, the image was sharp enough to read the warning labels on my sun visor. This would work. The hard part was going to be installation. I needed to get into that basement corridor, specifically the hallway that led to the wine cellar and that hidden door, without anyone noticing. I needed to access the smoke detector, open it up, install the camera, and close it back up, all without triggering any alarms or appearing on any security footage doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. And I needed to do it during a time when that corridor was empty, but I had a legitimate reason to be there. I spent 2 days planning it out, studying patrol routes, security camera coverage, staff schedules. The window I found was during the night shift, between 2 and 3 a.m., when most of the building was asleep and the night security team was focused on exterior patrols. I could claim I was doing a fire safety inspection, checking smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, emergency lighting. Boring, routine work that no one would question. The kind of thing security guys do when it's slow and they need to look busy. I ran it by Derek on a Friday afternoon. Mind if I do a fire safety sweep tonight? Been a while since anyone checked the basement level equipment. He barely looked up from his computer. Sure, whatever. Log it in the patrol book. That was it. Permission granted. I went in at 2:17 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Brought a small toolkit, screwdriver, flashlight. Nothing that would look out of place for maintenance work. The basement was empty, silent except for the hum of HVAC equipment. I made my way to the corridor outside the wine cellar, to the smoke detector I'd identified earlier in the week. It was mounted on the ceiling about 15 feet from the wine cellar entrance, with a clear line of sight down the hallway toward where that hidden door was located. Perfect placement. I pulled out my screwdriver, popped the cover off the smoke detector. The actual detector unit was about 3 inches in diameter, mounted on a circular base plate that attached to the ceiling. Plenty of room to hide the camera. I positioned it carefully on the inside edge of the base plate, magnetic backing holding it in place, lens pointing down and slightly angled toward the wine cellar entrance. From the ground, you'd never see it. Even if you took the cover off and looked inside, you'd have to know exactly what you were looking for. I tested the angle using my phone, checked the camera feed to make sure it captured what I needed, adjusted it slightly, checked again. Perfect. I could see the full hallway, the wine cellar door, and about 10 feet of the corridor beyond it. I put the smoke detector cover back on, made sure it looked undisturbed, and moved on to check 3 other smoke detectors on the same floor. Had to maintain the cover story. Tested them, logged them in my patrol notes, all routine. By 3:15 a.m., I was done, and back in my quarters, sitting on my bed with my laptop open, watching the camera feed. Empty hallway, dim lighting, nothing happening. The timestamp in the corner of the screen showed 03:17 a.m. I set the camera to motion-activated recording. It would save battery and make it easier to review footage later, and went to sleep. The first 3 days were nothing. I'd check the feed multiple times per day, during breaks, during lunch, before bed. Just empty corridor. Occasionally a staff member would walk past, or one of the night security guys doing rounds, but mostly it was just static shots of an empty hallway. I started wondering if I'd wasted my time and money. Maybe those meetings happened somewhere else in the building. Maybe I'd misread the patterns. Maybe that hidden door led to something completely mundane, and I was building conspiracy theories out of nothing. Then came the 4th night, Tuesday, June 27th. I remember the date because it was my son Tyler's birthday, and I'd spent most of the day feeling guilty that I wasn't home with him. I'd called in the morning, sang happy birthday over the phone while Sarah held up the phone to his face, and he smiled that gap-toothed smile that killed me. Promised him I'd be home on the weekend with a present. Felt like shit for missing it. That night I couldn't sleep. Combination of guilt and the adrenaline that comes from knowing you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. I was lying in bed at 1:43 a.m., scrolling through my phone, when I got the notification. Motion detected. I sat up immediately, opened the app. The camera feed loaded, and there they were. walking down the corridor in single file. Trump in front, wearing casual clothes, polo shirt and slacks, nothing formal, and behind him the six. I recognized them immediately. Same people I'd been watching for weeks. They moved silently, no conversation, just walking with purpose. My heart rate spiked. This was it. This was what I'd been waiting for. I maximized the video feed, turned up the brightness on my laptop screen. The timestamp showed 01:47 a.m. They reached the wine cellar entrance, and Trump opened it. Didn't need a key, just turned the handle. The others followed him inside. The door closed behind them. I waited, barely breathing, eyes locked on the screen. For about 90 seconds, nothing happened, just a closed door. Then I heard it through the camera's audio pickup, a faint mechanical sound, like something heavy sliding. The wine rack, probably. They were moving it aside, accessing the hidden door. I couldn't see it from the camera angle, but I knew what was happening. Another minute passed. Then the wine cellar door opened again, and they filed back out. But something was different. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. They looked the same clothes, same people, but the way they moved had changed. More fluid maybe, more synchronized. They walked back down the corridor the way they'd come and disappeared from the camera frame. The whole thing had taken maybe 4 minutes. I sat there staring at my laptop, my mind trying to process what I'd just seen. They'd gone in, accessed the hidden room, and come back out. But what had they done in there? And why did they look different when they came out? I rewound the footage and watched it again and again, trying to figure out what had changed. The third time through, I noticed it. Their posture. When they walked into the wine cellar, they moved like normal people. Slight variations in gait, different rhythms, individualized body language. When they came out, they moved in perfect synchronization. Same stride length, same arm swing, same head position. Like they were marching, or like they were being controlled by the same signal. I took screenshots, marked the timestamp, and saved the video file to 3 different locations: my laptop, an encrypted cloud drive, and a thumb drive I kept in my wallet. Evidence. But evidence of what? All I'd captured was 7 people walking into a wine cellar and coming back out 4 minutes later, moving a little differently. Nothing obviously illegal. Nothing that would prove anything to anyone who wasn't already suspicious. I needed more. I needed to see what happened inside that room. I needed to see what they looked like when they thought no one was watching. The camera battery would last another 48 hours, maybe less depending on how much motion it detected. I had to hope they'd meet again before it died. Had to hope that next time, something more revealing would happen in that corridor. I lay back down in bed but didn't sleep. Just kept checking the camera feed every few minutes, watching for more movement. Nothing. The rest of the night was quiet. At 6 a.m. I got up, got ready for my shift, and went back to work like everything was normal. But I was running on pure adrenaline now. Every time I saw Trump that day, I watched him differently. Watched how he moved. Watched how he interacted with people. Looking for signs of whatever I'd seen on that camera footage. The synchronization, the change in movement pattern. I didn't see anything obvious. He was the same as always. Loud, opinionated, constantly on his phone or watching TV. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. That there was a layer of reality operating just beneath what I could see, and I'd only glimpsed the edge of it. The camera stayed active for another 2 days. Captured some staff movement, a couple of security patrols. Nothing significant. Then, on the morning of the 3rd day, I checked the feed and saw the battery indicator flashing red. Less than 10% remaining. I had to retrieve it before it died completely. If the battery died while it was still installed, I'd have to go back and replace it, which meant another risky installation. I planned to pull it that night during another fire safety sweep. But before I could, something happened that made the camera footage seem insignificant. Something that proved I wasn't crazy. That validated every suspicious thought I'd had over the past 2 months. I was on personal detail that afternoon, standing outside a meeting room while Trump met with some political consultants. Boring stuff, campaign strategy for the midterms. I was half paying attention, mostly thinking about the camera and whether I should risk leaving it in place longer to capture more footage. That's when I heard it. A phone ringing inside the meeting room. Trump's personal cell. I heard him answer it. Heard his voice change to that tone he used when he was talking to someone important. "Yes," he said. "Thursday night, midnight. All 12 territories confirmed." There was a pause. "Good. We're on schedule. 2026 remains viable." Another pause. "The web situation is contained. He doesn't know anything actionable. My blood went cold. Webb, my name. They were talking about me. I pressed closer to the door, trying to hear more without being obvious. He's competent but not exceptional, Trump continued. Curious, which is a liability, but manageable. Derek has him on a short leash. The conversation continued, but I couldn't make out the rest clearly. Something about protocols and timelines and contingencies. Then he hung up. I stood there in that hallway, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to look casual while my entire world tilted sideways. They knew I was suspicious. They'd been watching me the same way I'd been watching them, and they thought I was contained, that I didn't know anything actionable. They were wrong about that. Because of that camera, because of that skin sample in my freezer, because of all the evidence I'd been gathering without their knowledge. But now I had a new problem. If they knew I was curious, if they were watching me, then how long before they discovered what I'd actually done? How long before they found that camera? How long before I went from manageable liability to immediate threat? I needed that footage. I needed to get that camera out tonight, before they swept the basement and found it. And then I needed to decide what the hell I was going to do with everything I'd discovered. I need you to understand something before I tell you what I saw on that camera. I need you to understand that I'm not crazy. I know how this is going to sound. I know what you're thinking right now, that I had a psychotic break, that the stress got to me, that I'm making this up for attention or money or whatever reason people make up stories. But I'm not. I have the footage. I have it saved in 3 different locations, and if something happens to me, it's set to automatically upload to places where people will see it. I'm telling you this because what I'm about to describe is going to test your understanding of reality. It tested mine. It broke mine, actually. I haven't been the same person since I watched this footage. I can't be. You can't unsee certain things. You can't unknow certain truths. And once you cross that line, once you see behind the curtain, there's no going back to the comfortable lie you were living before. So before I continue, take a breath. Maybe pause this if you need to. Because once I tell you what I saw, you're going to carry it with you too. And that's not something I'd wish on anyone. That night, after I heard Trump mention my name on the phone, after I realized they knew I was suspicious, I couldn't retrieve the camera. Derek had me on close personal detail for a private dinner that ran until almost 2 a.m. By the time I was released, the overnight security team had already started their rounds, and I couldn't risk going to the basement without a legitimate reason at that hour. So the camera stayed there, battery draining, recording whatever it recorded. I checked the feed from my quarters when I finally got back, saw it was down to 3% battery, the red light blinking in the corner of my screen like a warning. I thought about going down anyway, making up some excuse, but I was exhausted and paranoid, and I told myself it could wait until morning. That's a decision I'll regret for the rest of my life, not because of what happened to the camera, but because of what it captured before the battery died. I didn't check the footage until the next evening. I'd been on duty all day, running on maybe 3 hours of sleep, and I didn't have a private moment to look at my laptop until almost 7 p.m. when I finally got back to my quarters. I sat down, opened my laptop, pulled up the camera app. The battery had died at some point during the day. The feed was black, no connection, but the motion-activated recordings were there, saved to the app's local storage. There were 3 clips from the previous night. The first one was from 11:47 p.m., just a security guard doing rounds. Nothing unusual. The second one was from 1:23 a.m., a maintenance worker I recognized, probably doing some late-night repair. Still nothing. The third clip started at 2:31 a.m. Timestamp in the corner, clear as day. I clicked play. At first it was just the empty corridor, same as always. Then they entered the frame, all 7 of them. Trump in front again, the 6 others behind him in that same single-file formation. They walked to the wine cellar entrance. Trump opened the door. They filed inside. The door closed. I'd seen this part before, standard pattern, but I kept watching because something felt different about this recording. The timestamp clicked forward. 2:32 a.m., 2:33 a.m. The corridor stayed empty. 2:34 a.m., still nothing. Then at 2:35 a.m., I heard something through the audio pickup. Faint, but definitely there. A sound like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like metal scraping against stone, but with an organic quality. Like bones cracking, but at a lower frequency. The sound continued for maybe 30 seconds. Then silence. The timestamp kept ticking. 2:36 a.m., 2:37 a.m., 2:40 a.m. Nothing. I was about to fast forward when the wine cellar door opened, and Trump walked out. Except it wasn't Trump. I mean, it was him. Same clothes, same hair, same physical appearance. But the way he moved was wrong. Completely wrong. He took 3 steps into the corridor and I saw it clearly. His left knee bent backward, not slightly, not like a hyperextension injury. It bent backward a full 30 degrees, like his leg had the joint structure of a bird or a dinosaur. He walked on it normally, like this was natural, like this was how he always moved. Then he straightened it, and the joint snapped back into normal human configuration with a sound I could hear through the camera's microphone. A wet, cracking sound that made my stomach turn. He continued walking down the corridor, and I watched his gait, and it was all wrong. The rhythm was off. The weight distribution was wrong. He moved like something that had learned to walk like a human, but didn't quite have it down perfectly. Then the second person emerged from the wine cellar. One of the women, I think it was person 4, the blonde in her 30s. She walked normally for about 5 steps. Then she stopped, right in the middle of the corridor, directly under one of the overhead lights, and she reached up to her face. I thought she was adjusting her hair or wiping her eyes, but then I saw what she was actually doing. She grabbed the side of her face, her temple area, right by her hairline, and she pulled, and a seam appeared, a line of separation running from her temple down past her ear to her jawline. She pulled harder, and I realized she wasn't adjusting anything. She was removing her face, like you'd peel off a mask. But it wasn't a mask. It was her entire face. Skin, features, everything. It came off in one piece, and underneath, Jesus Christ, underneath was something else. I'm going to describe this as carefully as I can because I know how insane this sounds. But I watched this footage frame by frame. I've looked at it hundreds of times. I know what I saw. Underneath the human face was something reptilian. Scaled skin in a pattern that looked almost geometric. Hexagonal scales in a greenish-gray color that seemed to shift slightly depending on the angle of the light. The eye sockets were larger, positioned slightly more to the sides of the head, the eyes themselves. When she turned toward the camera for just a second, the light caught them, and they reflected, like when you take a photo of a cat at night and their eyes glow in the flash. But these weren't round pupils. They were vertical slits, like a snake, like a fucking snake. The nose was almost flat, just 2 small slits for nostrils. The mouth was wider than a human mouth should be, and when she opened it slightly, I think she was breathing, or maybe tasting the air. I could see rows of teeth. Small, sharp, uniform, not human teeth. She held the face skin in her hand for a moment, examining it like you'd examine a piece of clothing you'd just taken off. Then she folded it carefully and tucked it into a bag she was carrying. Put it away like it was valuable, like she'd need it again later. Then she continued walking down the corridor, and I watched her go, and she moved with that same wrong gait that Trump had. That digitigrade leg structure, that inhuman fluidity. I'm going to pause here for a second because I need you to understand that I'm watching this footage while I'm telling you about it. I have it open on my laptop right now. I'm looking at it as I record this, and I still can't fully process what I'm seeing. I've had weeks to come to terms with this, weeks to rationalize it, to tell myself I'm misinterpreting what's on the screen, and I can't. There's no rational explanation. There's no Hollywood prosthetics that work like this. There's no mask technology that allows you to peel off an entire face that moves and blinks and has blood flow to the skin. This was real. This was something else wearing human skin, pretending to be human, and doing a pretty good job of it until they thought no one was watching. The third person came out. One of the men, person 2, the older guy who looked like someone's grandfather. He didn't remove his face skin, but when he walked past the camera, he looked up at the overhead light, and his eyes did the same thing, reflected the light. Vertical pupils, clear as day. The footage captured it perfectly, that cat-eye shine in the darkness. I've seen that in animals, in nocturnal predators. I've never seen it in a human being. The next 3 came out together. They were talking. I could hear voices on the audio, but the words were wrong. Not English, not any language I recognized. It sounded almost like clicking mixed with low-frequency humming, like whale song mixed with insect noises. But they were definitely communicating. Definitely having a conversation. One of them, person 5, the elegant woman with the diamond earrings, gestured with her hand, and I saw that her fingers were too long. Not by much, maybe half an inch longer than they should be, with one extra joint in each finger. She flexed her hand, and the joints moved in sequence like a wave like something boneless. Then they passed out of frame, and the corridor was empty again. The timestamp showed 2:54 a.m., 23 minutes. That's how long they'd been inside that hidden room. 23 minutes to do whatever they did in there, to transform or reveal themselves or whatever the hell I'd just witnessed. The last person to emerge was Person 3, the younger guy, the one I'd thought was former military or intelligence. He came out last and he was holding something, a device of some kind, rectangular, about the size of a phone but thicker. It had lights on it, pulsing lights in a pattern I didn't recognize. He looked at it, touched the surface, and the lights changed pattern. Then he put it away in his jacket pocket and walked down the corridor. The wine cellar door stayed open for another minute. Then Trump came back into frame, walking that same wrong way, backward bending knees, too fluid movement, and closed the door from the outside. He stood there for a moment, and I watched him closely on the footage. He turned his head, and for just a second, I saw his profile. The skin on his neck was slightly separated from his jaw, like a mask that hadn't been sealed properly. A gap maybe 1/8 of an inch wide, running from behind his ear down to his collar. And through that gap, I could see something that wasn't skin underneath. Something darker, something scaled. He reached up, pressed the skin back into place, and the gap disappeared. Then he walked away, and the corridor was empty. The footage ended at 2:56 a.m. Battery died at 3:17 a.m. according to the logs. I sat there in my quarters, laptop open in front of me, staring at the frozen final frame of that recording, and I couldn't move. I physically could not move. My brain was trying to process what I'd just seen, and it couldn't. It was like trying to run software on hardware that wasn't designed for it. System error. Fatal exception. Reality. XE has stopped working. I want to be clear about something. I know what you're thinking. CGI. Deepfake. Someone edited this footage to make me look crazy or to discredit me or whatever, but this was a live feed from a camera I installed myself. A camera that transmitted encrypted video directly to an app on my laptop. There was no opportunity for anyone to intercept it and edit it. There was no reason for anyone to even know the camera existed, and the footage showed things that are impossible to fake with the technology I was using. The reflective eyes, that's not something you can add in post-production to low-resolution security footage. The movement patterns, the wrong joint angles, the sound of that woman's face peeling off, you can't fake that. Not without access to my laptop, not without knowing the camera was there, not without a level of technical sophistication that would require resources I didn't have. So either what I saw was real or I was hallucinating. And I've considered that option, believe me. I've considered that I had some kind of psychotic break brought on by stress or lack of sleep or some brain chemistry malfunction. But the footage exists. I've watched it on 3 different devices. I've shown it to, well, I'll get to that later. This isn't a hallucination. This is documentation of something that actually happened. I need to pause here. I've been talking for a while and I need to take a breath. When I first watched this footage, that night in my quarters, 3 weeks ago now, I couldn't finish it. I got to the part where that woman removed her face and I closed the laptop and just sat there shaking. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat the next day. I just kept thinking about what I'd seen, kept trying to make it make sense, and I couldn't. I went back and watched it again 3 days later, forced myself to watch the whole thing, and it was worse the second time because I knew what was coming. I knew I was about to see something that would confirm that everything I thought I understood about reality was wrong, and I watched it anyway, because I had to know if it was real, if I'd really seen what I thought I'd seen, and I had. It was real. It is real. These things, whatever they are, they exist. They're here. They're in positions of power. They're wearing our faces. And they've been doing it for God knows how long. That's what keeps me up at night now. Not just that they exist, but that they're hidden, that they're pretending, that there's a whole layer of reality that most people never see. And the people who do see it either don't survive or don't get believed. I have the footage. I have the skin sample. I have evidence. And it doesn't matter. Because who do I show it to? Who do I tell? The FBI. They're probably infiltrated too. The media, they'd call me crazy and bury the story. Other security guys? Derek already told Trump I'm contained. I'm alone with this knowledge. And now you are too. I'm sorry about that, I really am. But someone had to know. I didn't go back to the footage for almost a week. I couldn't. Every time I thought about opening that file, I felt sick. Physically sick. like my body was rejecting the information my brain was trying to process. I went through the motions at work, showed up on time, did my job, stood where I was supposed to stand, watched what I was supposed to watch, but I was operating on autopilot. Sarah called me 3 times that week asking if I was okay, saying I sounded distant, asking if something had happened. I told her I was fine, just tired, just stressed from the long hours. She didn't believe me. "Marcus, you sound like you did after your second tour, like you've seen something you can't talk about." She was more right than she knew. I had seen something I couldn't talk about, something I couldn't unsee, something that had fundamentally broken my understanding of how the world worked. But I couldn't tell her that. Couldn't tell her that the people I was protecting weren't people at all. Couldn't tell her that reality was a lie and I had proof. So I just said I was fine and changed the subject. It was Sarah, actually, who inadvertently got me to look at the footage again. We were on the phone one night, must have been around 11 p.m. She was just getting off her nursing shift, and she was telling me about a patient who'd come in with what looked like a heart attack, but turned out to be anxiety. The EKG showed something weird, she said, so they ran more tests. Turned out the guy's heart was completely fine. The symptoms were real, but the cause was psychological. His brain was creating physical symptoms based on stress. She was making a point about how stress manifests physically, how I should take better care of myself. But what I heard was different. I heard, sometimes you need more data to understand what you're seeing. Sometimes the obvious answer isn't the complete answer. Sometimes you need to look deeper. So that night, after we hung up, I opened the footage again. But this time I didn't watch it. I listened to it. I closed my eyes and just played the audio, trying to separate what I could hear from what I could see, trying to find details I'd missed while I was in visual shock. The audio quality wasn't great. It was a surveillance camera designed for visual, not audio capture, but there was sound, background noise, footsteps, breathing, and voices. Those clicking, humming voices I'd heard when they came out of the hidden room. I'd dismissed them before as just alien sounds, incomprehensible noise. But now, listening carefully with headphones on, I realized there was structure to it, pattern, language. I have some audio software on my laptop. Nothing fancy, just programs I'd picked up over the years for various reasons. One of them was a noise reduction tool I'd used before to clean up recordings of interviews during background checks. I ran the footage audio through it, filtered out the background hum of the HVAC system, amplified the frequency range where the voices were, and suddenly I could hear them more clearly. Still not English, still that clicking, humming hybrid sound, but distinct enough that I could tell different voices apart. One was higher pitched, one had a rasping quality, one had what sounded like a double tone, like 2 people speaking in harmony. I kept working with the audio, isolating different sections, trying to find anything that sounded like English, or any language I recognized. Most of it was incomprehensible. But then, about 14 minutes into the footage, right before they came out of the hidden room, I caught something. A voice. Trump's voice. Speaking English. Clear as day. Council confirmed the date. 2026 winter solstice. All territories aligned. There was a pause. Then another voice responded. Not in that clicking language, but in English with a strange accent I couldn't place. Confirmed. 12 territories prepared. Protocol sequence initiated. Trump again. And the agreement of 47 holds? No interference from the remaining factions? The other voice. Agreement holds. They believe the transition is natural progression. They suspect nothing. Another voice joined in. Female, one of the women from the group. What about the Dulce supply situation? The latest shipments were compromised. Trump. Dulce is contained. We've increased security protocols. The supply chain will stabilize before the transition date. I stopped the audio. Played it back. Listened again. They were speaking English. Clear, normal English. Discussing dates and agreements and territories like they were planning some kind of operation. 2026. Winter solstice. That was December 21st, 2026. About 3.5 years from now. What was happening on that date? What was this transition they kept mentioning? And what the hell was the agreement of 47? I grabbed my phone and started searching. Typed in Agreement 1947 first. Got results about post-war treaties, United Nations stuff, nothing relevant. Then I tried Agreement of 47 UFO, and that's when things got interesting. Page after page of conspiracy theory websites, forums, YouTube videos with thumbnails showing aliens and government documents, all talking about something called the 1947 Roswell Agreement, or the Greada Treaty. or a dozen other names. The basic story was consistent across sources. In 1947, after the Roswell crash, the US government had allegedly made contact with an extraterrestrial species, and according to these theories, they'd made an agreement. The species would be allowed to conduct certain activities on Earth, experiments, operations, whatever, in exchange for technology and a promise not to interfere with human governments. I'd heard about this stuff before, obviously. Everyone has. It's classic conspiracy theory material, ancient aliens territory, the kind of thing that rational people dismiss as entertainment for people who believe in chemtrails and flat Earth. I'd always put it in that category. Fun stories, no basis in reality, harmless as long as people didn't take it too seriously. But now I was looking at these websites with different eyes, because I'd just heard Trump, or whatever Trump actually was, reference an agreement of 47 while standing in his reptilian form in a hidden room beneath Mar-a-Lago. Suddenly these crazy conspiracy theories weren't looking so crazy anymore. I spent 3 hours that night going down the rabbit hole, reading forum posts, watching documentary clips, taking notes. Most of it was poorly sourced speculation and obvious fabrication, but some of it had details that made me pause. References to non-human entities in positions of power, descriptions of skin suits that allowed them to appear human, mentions of underground facilities where these entities conducted operations away from human observation. It was like someone had written a manual for exactly what I'd discovered and posted it on the internet where it would be dismissed as fiction. Then I searched for Dulce combined with base and facility. Holy shit, there were hundreds of results. The Dulce-based conspiracy theory, an alleged underground facility near Dulce, New Mexico, where the government supposedly conducted joint operations with alien species, genetic experiments, human-alien hybridization, biological research. Again, this was all standard conspiracy theory material, the kind of thing that gets featured on late-night radio shows and cheap documentaries. But I just heard these creatures mention Dulce by name, mention a supply situation, and shipments. What were they supplying? What were the shipments? I didn't want to think about the obvious answer, but I thought about that skin material I'd found in the medical waste, that synthetic organic flesh that felt warm and had vascular structures. What if that wasn't synthetic at all? What if that was biological material being supplied from somewhere? From a facility like Dulce? For what purpose? To create those face skins they wore? To maintain their human disguises? I felt sick again. Really sick. Had to close my laptop and just sit there breathing for a few minutes. The 12 territories thing bothered me too. I searched for that phrase combined with various keywords. Didn't find much that was specific, but I found enough to piece together a theory. Some of the conspiracy websites talked about the world being divided into 12 administrative zones controlled by non-human entities. North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, carved up like a map from a Risk game. Each zone supposedly had representatives, leaders who were either non-human or working with non-humans, and they met periodically to coordinate their activities, to plan the transition, that word again. Transition to what? I went back to the audio, listened to the whole thing again from start to finish. There was more I'd missed. About 18 minutes in, one of the voices said something about biological compatibility increasing, and the prepared population reaching threshold numbers. Another voice mentioned resistance factions neutralized in 6 territories, minimal interference expected. This wasn't just about individuals. This was about populations, about large-scale operations spanning the entire planet, about something so big that it made my little discovery in Mar-a-Lago seem insignificant by comparison. I started connecting dots. Those 6 people who met with Trump every 9 to 12 days, what if they were representatives from other territories? What if these meetings were coordination sessions? What if Mar-a-Lago was one of 12 sites around the world where these things gathered to plan whatever they were planning? That would explain the secrecy. That would explain the security. That would explain why these specific people kept coming back. They weren't political donors or advisors or family friends. They were co-conspirators, partners in whatever this operation was. And Trump wasn't just a former president. He was one of them, a representative for this territory. North America maybe, or just the United States, holding meetings, making decisions, coordinating with the others, all while pretending to be human, all while millions of people watched him on TV and argued about his policies and treated him like he was one of us. He wasn't one of us. None of them were. And if Trump was one of them, how many others were there? How many politicians, business leaders, celebrities, people in positions of power? How many were actually these things wearing human skin? How deep did this go? I made a document, started compiling everything I'd found. The footage, the audio, my notes, screenshots from the conspiracy websites. I know how this looks. Guy starts believing conspiracy theories after watching weird footage, goes down the internet rabbit hole, confirmation bias does the rest. I get it, but I want you to understand something. I didn't go looking for this information to confirm what I'd seen. I went looking to explain it away. I wanted to find evidence that what I'd witnessed was fake or misunderstood or anything other than what it appeared to be. I wanted someone on these forums to explain how the footage could be faked. I wanted someone to debunk the Dulce base or the Roswell agreement or all of it. I wanted to be wrong. But instead, I found consistency. I found details in these crazy conspiracy theories that matched exactly what I'd seen and heard. Things that would be impossible to fake unless you had access to my footage, unless you knew what I'd discovered. And that's when it hit me. What if these conspiracy theories weren't theories at all? What if they were leaks? What if other people, over the years, had discovered the same things I'd discovered, had seen these creatures, had found evidence, had tried to tell someone about it? And what if the best way to discredit them was to let them tell their stories, but frame those stories as conspiracy theories? Put them on websites that also talk about chemtrails and flat Earth. Mix the truth with obvious lies. Make sure that anyone who stumbles onto the real information automatically associates it with crazy people. Camouflage the truth in fiction. Hide it in plain sight. Everything I thought was insane internet nonsense, it was in the audio. The Agreement of 47, the 12 territories, Dulce, 2026 winter solstice, all of it. Right there in the voices of these creatures discussing their plans like it was a normal business meeting. And I realized something that made my hands shake. I wasn't the first person to discover this. I couldn't be. This operation was too big, too long-running, too organized. Other people had found evidence over the years. Other security guards, other staff members, other people who stumbled into things they weren't supposed to see. And what happened to them? Were they discredited, disappeared, killed? Or were they contained like Trump said I was? Managed, monitored, allowed to live as long as they didn't become a real threat? I thought about Derek, about how he'd been watching me, reporting on me, about how Trump knew I was curious. They'd let me investigate this far because they thought I was manageable. They thought I didn't have real evidence. They were wrong about that. But they were also probably monitoring me right now, watching to see what I'd do with what I'd found. And I had to decide, do I run? Do I expose this? Do I take this footage and this audio and try to show it to someone who might believe me? Or do I pretend I never saw anything? Go back to work, collect my paycheck, and live with this knowledge eating me alive from the inside? I didn't have a good answer to that question. I still don't. All I know is that everything I believed about reality was wrong. And now you know it too. I had to get that camera. I know that sounds stupid. I had the footage already. I had the evidence saved in 3 different locations. The camera itself was just hardware, but I couldn't leave it there. It had my fingerprints on it, maybe DNA from when I'd installed it. And if they found it during a security sweep, if they traced it back to me, then I'd lose whatever advantage I still had. They thought I was contained, manageable, just a curious employee who didn't know anything actionable. But if they found that camera, they'd know I had footage. They'd know I had proof. And then I wouldn't be manageable anymore. I'd be a threat. So, 3 days after I'd analyzed the audio, after I'd spent 72 hours barely sleeping and constantly looking over my shoulder, I decided I had to retrieve it. The plan was simple. Wait until the middle of the night when the building was quiet. Do another fire safety inspection. I'd done them before. It was a legitimate reason to be checking smoke detectors. Get in, get the camera, get out. 5 minutes, maybe 10. Easy. I'd done more dangerous extractions in Afghanistan. This was nothing. That's what I told myself anyway. I waited until 3 a.m. on a Thursday. I'd checked the schedule. Trump was asleep. Derek was off duty. The night security team was doing exterior patrols. The building was as empty as it ever got. I left my quarters at 3:07 a.m. with my toolkit, my flashlight, and a story ready about responding to a potential fire alarm malfunction. Just routine maintenance. Nothing suspicious. The walk to the basement took about 3 minutes. Every step felt wrong. Every shadow looked like it was moving. Every sound made me want to turn around and go back. But I kept walking because turning back wasn't an option anymore. I'd crossed too many lines, learned too many things, committed too many crimes. The only way out was through. I took the service elevator down to the basement level. The doors opened and that cold air hit me immediately. Still 8 degrees colder than the rest of the building. Still that faint ozone smell. The corridor was empty. Lights were dimmed for night mode, just enough to see by. I walked quickly toward the wine cellar, toward the smoke detector where I'd hidden the camera. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Marine training taking over. Breathing controlled. Situational awareness at maximum. This was just another operation. Just another mission. Extract the asset and exfiltrate. Simple. I reached the smoke detector at 3:14 a.m. Looked around one more time. Corridor empty, no sounds, no movement. I pulled out my screwdriver and popped the cover off the detector. Reached inside for the camera. My fingers found it immediately, still magnetically attached to the base plate right where I'd left it. I pulled it free, stuck it in my pocket, and was about to close the detector cover when the lights came on. Not gradually, all at once. Full brightness, like someone had flipped a switch. I froze, every instinct screaming danger. And then I heard his voice. "You shouldn't be here, Marcus." I turned slowly. Trump was standing at the end of the corridor, maybe 20 feet away, just standing there in a dark suit, white shirt, red tie, like he was about to go do a press conference. At 3:15 in the morning, in the basement, alone. But that's not what made my blood run cold. It was his eyes. They weren't right. Even from 20 feet away, even in the bright corridor lighting, I could see that they weren't the same eyes I'd been seeing on TV and in person for the last 3 months. They were reflecting the light, just slightly, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. Vertical pupils, like the footage, like what I'd seen when they thought no one was watching. "Sir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just doing a routine fire safety check. Smoke detector was showing a fault on the system." "No, it wasn't," he interrupted, and his voice was wrong too. It had that same quality I'd heard in the audio, that harmonic doubling, like two voices speaking in perfect synchronization, one slightly lower than the other. "We've been watching you, Marcus, watching you watch us. You're very thorough, very persistent. Those are qualities I usually admire." He took a step closer. "But you've seen things you weren't supposed to see, and that presents us with a problem." I didn't respond. I was calculating distances, exit routes, threat assessment. 20 feet to Trump, 40 feet to the elevator behind me, 30 feet to the stairs to my right. Wine cellar door was closer, but that led to the hidden room, to them, not an option. Trump took another step. "We gave you every opportunity to be smart about this. We paid you well. We made sure you were comfortable. All we asked was that you do your job and not ask questions. But you couldn't do that, could you?" Another step closer, 15 feet now. "You had to be curious. You had to investigate. You had to take things that didn't belong to you." He knew. He knew about the camera, maybe about the skin sample too, which meant they'd been watching me more closely than I'd realized, which meant I was in serious danger right now. I did what my training taught me to do in situations like this. I ran, didn't think about it, didn't hesitate, just turned and sprinted toward the stairs. Behind me I heard Trump's voice, but it wasn't speaking English anymore. It was that clicking, humming language from the footage. And it was loud, way too loud for one person, like he was broadcasting, calling for backup. I hit the stairwell door at full speed, slammed through it, took the stairs 3 at a time. My mind was racing. CQB training from Quantico, close quarters battle. When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you move fast, you use terrain to your advantage, and you don't stop moving until you're clear. I could hear footsteps behind me, multiple sets, heavy, fast, not quite matching a human running rhythm, that wrong gait I'd seen in the footage. How many? 3? 4? I'd only seen Trump in the corridor, but I could hear at least 3 sets of footsteps now. Where had the others come from? The hidden room? Had they been down there the whole time waiting? I burst through the stairwell door onto the ground floor. Main hallway. I knew this building's layout like I knew my own apartment. Service corridor to the left would take me to the kitchen. Kitchen had an emergency exit that led to the loading area. From there I could get to the perimeter wall. I ran left, footsteps pounding behind me. Not gaining, but not falling behind either. They were pacing me, hurting me maybe. I grabbed my radio off my belt and threw it against the wall as hard as I could. Smashed it. If they were tracking me through security systems, I wasn't going to make it easy. The kitchen was ahead, 50 feet. 30. I could see the emergency exit sign glowing red. Almost there. Behind me, the clicking sounds got louder, closer, and then I heard something that made my skin crawl. Laughter. Human laughter mixed with that inhuman clicking. Like they were enjoying this. Like this was fun for them. I hit the kitchen door and immediately started grabbing things. Pots from the rack, pans from the counter, throwing them behind me as I ran. Not trying to hit anyone, just creating obstacles, buying seconds. I heard something metal crash, and a hiss of what might have been pain or anger. Good. Keep moving. The emergency exit was right there. I slammed into the push bar and the door flew open. Alarm started blaring immediately. Loud, piercing, echoing through the building. Perfect. More chaos, more confusion, more time. I was outside now. Loading area. Dumpsters to my left. Delivery trucks parked to my right. The perimeter wall was ahead, 10 feet high, topped with decorative ironwork. I'd climbed worse in training. I ran straight at it, jumped, caught the top of the wall with both hands. The ironwork cut into my palms, but I didn't care. I pulled myself up and over, dropped down on the other side, landed hard on grass, rolled, back on my feet, kept running. Behind me, I could hear the alarm still blaring, could hear shouting. Security team would be responding to the alarm, which meant I had maybe 2 minutes before the whole area was swarmed with people looking for what triggered it. I ran across the lawn toward the street. No lights, staying in shadows, Marine patrol training keeping me invisible. I'd parked my car 2 blocks away, old exfiltration protocol from my service days. Never park where they expect you to park. Always have a backup escape route. Always assume you might need to run. I reached the street and slowed to a walk. Couldn't run on a public street at 3:20 a.m. without attracting attention. Just a guy out for a late-night walk. Nothing suspicious. My heart was hammering, and my palms were bleeding from the ironwork, but I kept my pace casual. 2 blocks. Past expensive houses with their security lights and their manicured lawns. Past a late-night jogger who didn't even look at me. Past a car that might have been security, but might have just been someone parked on the street. I didn't look back. Looking back is what gets you caught. My car was right where I'd left it. Old Honda Civic. Nothing fancy. Deliberately unmemorable. I got in, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb at exactly the speed limit. No screeching tires, no dramatic acceleration. Just a car leaving a parking spot. In my rearview mirror, I could see lights coming on at Mar-a-Lago. Flashlights moving. They were searching, but they were searching the grounds. They hadn't realized yet that I'd made it off the property. I drove for 15 minutes before I let myself think about what had just happened. Before I let myself process the fact that I'd just run from my employer, that I'd just been chased through Mar-a-Lago by things that weren't human, that my life as I knew it was over. I pulled into a 24-hour gas station, parked under the lights where security cameras would see me, sat there shaking, not from fear exactly, from adrenaline dump, from the crash that comes after combat. I'd been in firefights before. I'd been in situations where people were trying to kill me, but this was different. This was wrong in a way that combat never was. Combat made sense. You knew who the enemy was, you knew what they wanted, you knew the rules of engagement. This didn't make sense. These things, whatever they were, they'd been living among us. They'd been in positions of power. They'd been wearing our faces and making decisions that affected millions of people. And when I discovered them, when I saw through their disguise, they didn't kill me. They chased me, like it was a game, like they wanted to see what I'd do, or maybe they wanted to see where I'd go, who I'd contact, what I'd do with the evidence I had. I pulled out my phone and checked the footage was still there. It was, still saved, still intact. The camera in my pocket was useless now. Battery was dead and I'd probably damaged it when I jumped the wall. But the footage was safe, the evidence existed, and they knew I had it. That's what Trump had meant when he said, "You've seen things you weren't supposed to see." He knew I had proof, which meant I couldn't go back, couldn't go home to Sarah and the kids, couldn't return to my normal life, because they'd be watching, waiting to see what I'd do next. I sat in that gas station parking lot for almost an hour, trying to figure out my next move. I had maybe $300 in cash in my wallet. I had my phone, which was probably being tracked. I had my laptop back in my quarters at Mar-a-Lago, which I'd never see again. I had the footage stored in cloud drives, but how long before they found those and deleted them? I had a skin sample in my freezer at home, but I couldn't go get it without putting Sarah and the kids in danger. I had evidence of something impossible, and no one I could trust to show it to. The FBI was probably compromised. That agent I'd called had used their terminology. Local police would think I was crazy. The media would dismiss me as another conspiracy nut. And anyone I did tell, anyone I tried to bring into this, I'd be putting at risk. I thought about just driving, getting on the highway and going as far as the gas in my tank would take me. But running wasn't a long-term solution. They had resources I couldn't imagine. They had people everywhere. If they wanted to find me, they would, unless I went public. Unless I made the footage so widely available that killing me or silencing me wouldn't matter anymore. But was I ready to do that? Was I ready to blow up my entire life? To be labeled a conspiracy theorist or a nut job? To never see my family again? Was the truth worth that price? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. What I did have was the camera in my pocket, the footage in the cloud, and the knowledge that I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I'd run from them. I'd shown them I wasn't contained anymore. And that meant, whatever came next, I'd brought it on myself. I started the car and drove. Didn't know where I was going yet. Just knew I couldn't stay still. Had to keep moving. Had to think. Had to figure out my next move before they figured out theirs. That was 6 hours ago. Now I'm recording this in a rest stop bathroom in Kentucky, or maybe Tennessee. The sirens are getting closer. I can hear them through the walls. And I know that whether I upload this footage or not, whether I go public or not, my life is never going to be the same. Because I've seen them. I know what they are. And they know that I know. That's the real prison. Not just being watched, but knowing you're being watched by things that aren't human. Things that have been pretending to be human for God knows how long. Things that have plans for 2026, for the winter solstice, for whatever transition they keep talking about. And knowing that you can't stop them, that you're just one person with some footage and a crazy story that no one will believe. That's what keeps me moving. That's what keeps me recording this. Because even if they catch me, even if I disappear, at least someone will know the truth. At least you'll know what's really out there, wearing our faces, making our decisions, planning our future, without our knowledge or consent. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be smarter than I was. Maybe you'll know what to do with that information, because I sure as hell don't. I drove for 6 hours straight, didn't stop except for gas, didn't eat, barely blinked, just kept my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road, and tried not to think about what had just happened. Tried not to think about Trump standing in that corridor with those eyes. Tried not to think about the sound of multiple footsteps chasing me through the building. Tried not to think about my wife and kids back home who were about to wake up and find out their husband and father had disappeared. The sun came up somewhere around South Carolina. I watched it rise in my rearview mirror and felt nothing, just numb, exhausted. Running on adrenaline and fear and the kind of hyper-awareness that comes from knowing you're being hunted. I crossed into Georgia around 9 a.m., stopped at a gas station, paid cash, bought a burner phone from the convenience store, the kind drug dealers use. Prepaid, untraceable, no contract. I activated it in the parking lot and threw my regular phone in a dumpster behind the building. If they were tracking me, and they definitely were tracking me, that would buy me some time. Not much, but some. By noon I was in Tennessee, small town off I-75, the kind of place with more churches than stoplights. I found a motel on the edge of town, one of those old roadside places with rooms that open directly to the parking lot. The sign said, vacancy, and $39.99 a night, and the woman at the desk didn't ask for ID when I paid cash. Perfect. I got a room on the end, away from the road, with a view of the parking lot so I could see if anyone pulled in. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Stained carpet, TV that probably got 4 channels, bed that felt like it was made of concrete wrapped in fabric, but it had a lock on the door and no windows facing anywhere someone could see in. That's all I needed. I sat on that bed for maybe 10 minutes, just breathing, trying to get my heart rate down to something approaching normal. Then I pulled out the burner phone and made the call I'd been dreading since I left Florida. I called the FBI, not the main number. A tip line I'd found years ago when I was doing background research for a security job, anonymous reporting, for whistleblowers, and people who'd witnessed federal crimes. I figured if anyone could help me, if anyone would take this seriously, it would be them. The phone rang 4 times, then a voice answered. Male, professional, neutral tone. Federal Bureau of Investigation tip line. How can I help you? I took a breath. I need to report. I've witnessed something. Something involving national security. I have evidence of non-human entities operating in positions of federal power. There was a pause. long enough that I thought he might have hung up. Then, "I see. Can you be more specific about what you've witnessed?" I started explaining, carefully, trying not to sound crazy. I told him I'd been working private security for a high-profile individual, that I'd observed unusual behavior, that I'd documented evidence of non-human biological material and recorded footage of these entities in their non-human form. I didn't mention names, didn't mention Trump specifically, just laid out the facts as clinically as I could. The agent listened, asked a few clarifying questions. Where was I located? Did I still have access to this evidence? Was I in immediate danger? I answered what I could without giving away too much. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. "I understand your concern about the transition. A lot of people are feeling anxious right now. The transition, that specific word, the same word I'd heard in the audio from the footage, the same word Trump and those 6 creatures had used when discussing their plans for 2026. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. My mind was racing. "Sir?" the agent said. "Are you still there?" I hung up, just pressed the end call button and sat there staring at the phone in my hand. The FBI was compromised. Had to be. Either that agent was one of them, or he'd been briefed on what to listen for, what keywords to recognize. The transition, he'd used it naturally, like it was a normal phrase for a federal agent to use with a random whistleblower, but it wasn't normal. It was their word, their terminology, which meant they knew people were discovering things, which meant they had protocols in place for when someone called with evidence, which meant I couldn't trust federal law enforcement, couldn't trust the one institution that was supposed to investigate exactly this kind of thing. I threw the burner phone against the wall, watched it shatter into pieces, felt like screaming, but didn't because the walls were thin and I couldn't draw attention. I still had my laptop. I'd grabbed it from my car after I'd parked. I'd had it in my trunk since the day before. Was planning to do some work during a break. Lucky coincidence. Or maybe not coincidence. Maybe some part of my subconscious knew I'd need it. I opened it up, connected to the motel's Wi-Fi, pulled up the footage I'd saved in 3 different cloud storage accounts. Dropbox, Google Drive, and some encrypted service I'd signed up for years ago. The files were all there. Video intact, audio intact, evidence of everything I'd seen. Now I just needed to get it out there, make it so public that they couldn't suppress it. Upload it to YouTube, to Twitter, to every social media platform I could think of. Send it to journalists, to news organizations, to anyone with an audience who might actually look at it. I started with YouTube, created a new account using a fake name and a temporary email address, uploaded the video file, titled it something attention-grabbing but vague, classified security footage, Mar-a-Lago 2023. Wrote a description explaining what it showed, when it was recorded, why it mattered. Hit publish. The upload took about 15 minutes. I watched the progress bar creep across the screen. 47%, 68%, 89%, 100%. Upload complete. Processing video. I refreshed the page. The video was live, public. Anyone could watch it. I copied the link and started sending it everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. Emailed to every journalist whose address I could find online. Major newspapers, cable news networks, independent media. Even a few conspiracy theory websites because fuck it, they might actually take it seriously. I wrote the same message for each one. I worked private security for Donald Trump. I have footage of him and others in non-human form. This is real. This is happening. Please investigate. I hit send on maybe 30 emails. Watched them go through. Then I went back to YouTube to check the view count. The page loaded. This video has been removed for violating YouTube's terms of service. What? I refreshed. Same message. I checked the time. The video had been live for less than 3 minutes. How did they review it and remove it that fast? That's not possible. YouTube's moderation isn't that quick, unless they were specifically watching for it, unless they had systems in place to detect and remove exactly this kind of content. I tried again. Different account, different title, different description. Uploaded the same footage. This time it lasted maybe 90 seconds before it was removed. I tried a third time, removed in under a minute. They were catching it faster each time, learning, adapting. I switched to Twitter, tried to post the video directly. Your account has been suspended for violating our policies. I'd literally just created the account. Hadn't even finished setting up a profile picture. How was it already suspended? I tried Facebook, same thing. Instagram, same thing. Reddit wouldn't even let me create an account. kept saying my email address was invalid even though I'd just used it successfully for other sites. They weren't just removing the content, they were preventing me from posting it in the first place. Somehow they knew. Somehow they were monitoring my activity in real time and shutting down every attempt before I could get the information out there. I sat back from the laptop, hands shaking. How was this possible? How did they have this much control? These were private companies, independent platforms, different organizations with different policies and different moderation systems. There's no way they could all coordinate this quickly, unless they weren't independent. Unless the people running these platforms, the executives, the board members, the content moderators, unless some of them were part of this too, part of the 12 territories, part of the network. Jesus Christ. How deep did this go? I checked my email to see if any of the journalists had responded. Every single email had bounced back. Delivery failed. Recipient address rejected. But I knew these addresses. I'd verified them before sending. These were legitimate journalists from major news organizations. Their email addresses were public. I'd literally copied them from their author pages and Twitter profiles. So why were they bouncing? I tried sending a test email to myself using one of the addresses. It went through fine. I tried sending to my wife's email address. Went through fine. But when I tried sending to any of the journalists again, bounce. Every single one. Like the emails existed, like the addresses were real, but something was intercepting my messages before they could reach their destination. Some filter. Some system watching for specific content from specific sources. They weren't just controlling social media. They were controlling email. They were controlling the entire fucking internet. Or at least the parts of it that mattered. The parts that could spread information. The parts that could reach people. I tried one more thing. Went to a file sharing service. The kind people use to send large files that are too big for email. Uploaded the video there. Generated a download link. Then I went to a random Reddit thread, something completely unrelated, some discussion about video games or movies I don't even remember, and I posted the link in a comment. Just the URL, no context, no explanation. Figured maybe if I didn't flag it as important, if I didn't use any keywords that might trigger their filters, it might slip through. I watched that comment for 10 minutes, saw it get 1 upvote, then 2, then it disappeared, not deleted by moderators. Not removed for violating rules, just gone, like it had never existed. And when I tried to post another comment in the same thread, Reddit told me I was doing that too much and to try again in 8 minutes. Shadow banned. They'd shadow banned me, made it so my posts were invisible to everyone except me, so I could keep trying, keep wasting time and energy while accomplishing nothing. This wasn't just content moderation. This wasn't just automated systems catching violations. This was targeted, sophisticated, real-time suppression. They were watching everything I did online and shutting it down instantly, which meant they had access to everything, to my IP address, to my device fingerprints, to every account I created, and every platform I accessed. They'd mapped my digital presence and built a cage around it, and I'd walked right into that cage thinking I could expose them. I closed the laptop. Sat there on that motel bed feeling more helpless than I'd ever felt in my life. In Afghanistan, when things went bad, you could shoot back. You could call for support. You could retreat to a defensible position and wait for extraction. The enemy was visible. The fight was physical. You could win or lose based on tactics and training and luck. But this was different. This was an enemy that controlled the information infrastructure. That could make you disappear digitally before they disappeared you physically. That could prevent you from communicating, from sharing evidence, from telling anyone what you'd seen. They didn't need to kill me. They didn't need to silence me with violence. They could just isolate me, make sure that anything I tried to say went nowhere, make sure that any evidence I tried to share never reached anyone who mattered. And even if it did reach someone, even if somehow I found a way to get the footage out there, who would believe it? It would be on conspiracy websites. It would be shared by people who also believed in chemtrails and flat earth. It would be debunked as CGI or deep fake or the ramblings of someone who'd had a mental breakdown. They discredited the truth by making sure it only appeared in places where crazy people posted crazy things. And I was about to become one of those crazy people. A cautionary tale. The security guard who lost his mind and started believing his boss was a lizard person. They didn't control just the government. They didn't control just the corporations. They controlled the entire goddamn information ecosystem. And anyone who saw through it, anyone who figured it out, Anyone who tried to expose it, they got contained, marginalized, made irrelevant. I thought about Sarah, about Tyler and Madison, about the life I'd had just 12 hours ago. That life was gone now. I'd given it up the moment I installed that camera, the moment I decided I needed to know the truth. And now I had the truth, and the truth was useless, because I couldn't share it, couldn't prove it, couldn't do a damn thing with it except carry it around like a weight that would slowly crush me. I lay back on that concrete hard motel bed and stared at the ceiling. Water stains up there, cracks in the plaster, normal deterioration of a normal building in a normal world. Except the world wasn't normal. The world was being run by things that weren't human. That had been running it for God knows how long. And they'd built systems, technological systems, social systems, institutional systems, that made it nearly impossible to expose them. Nearly impossible, but not completely impossible. There had to be a way. Some method they hadn't thought of. Some platform they didn't control. Some channel of communication that could reach people without being filtered and suppressed. I just had to find it, had to think, had to use my training not for physical combat, but for information warfare, because that's what this was now. A war fought with data and evidence and the ability to make people believe something their entire worldview told them was impossible. And I was losing, badly, but I wasn't dead yet, wasn't captured yet, which meant I still had a chance, however small, however unlikely. I still had the footage, still had the evidence. And as long as I had that, as long as I could keep it safe and keep myself alive, there was still a possibility that somehow, someday, someone would see it and believe it and do something about it. That's what I told myself anyway. That's what kept me from giving up completely. The distant, almost delusional hope that the truth mattered, that evidence mattered, that reality couldn't be suppressed forever. But sitting there in that motel room, watching my every attempt to communicate get shut down in real time, I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. I'd been sitting in that motel room for maybe an hour, maybe two, just staring at the laptop screen and trying to figure out my next move when my burner phone rang. Wait, no, not the burner phone. I'd smashed that against the wall. I still had my old phone. I'd thrown it in a dumpster, but I must have grabbed it before I drove away. Must have pulled it out without thinking. Muscle memory. It was in my pocket and it was ringing, and I stared at it like it was a live grenade, because if it was ringing, they could track it. They knew where I was. But the caller ID said Sarah Mobile, and I couldn't not answer. I couldn't leave her wondering. Couldn't let her think I'd just disappeared without explanation. So I answered. Sarah? My voice came out rough, exhausted. Marcus. She sounded scared. Really scared. Not Sarah dealing with a difficult patient scared. Genuinely terrified. Marcus. There are men here. At the house. They say they're FBI. They're asking about you. They want to know where you are. My blood went cold. How many? 4. They showed badges. They look official. But Marcus, something's wrong. They're not asking questions like police would ask questions. They're just standing there, watching me, watching Tyler and Madison. Sarah, listen to me very carefully. I was trying to keep my voice calm, but I could hear it shaking. I need you to look at them. Look at their eyes. Tell me what you see. Marcus, what? Just do it, please. I heard movement, heard her breathing. Then her voice came back, quieter, more uncertain. Their eyes are... Marcus, they're not blinking, like at all. I've been watching one of them for 30 seconds and he hasn't blinked once. What color are their eyes? Brown. But when the light from the window hits them, they look different. Yellow? Gold? I don't know how to describe it. Reflective? Yes. Oh my God, Marcus. What's going on? Who are these people? I wanted to tell her, wanted to explain everything. But how do you tell your wife that the men in your house aren't human? That they're there because you discovered something you weren't supposed to discover? That your family is now in danger because of what you know? Sarah, I need you to listen. Take Tyler and Madison. Tell these men you need to use the bathroom. Take the kids with you. Lock the door. Climb out the bathroom window. Go to your mother's house. Right now. Don't pack anything. Don't explain. Just go. Marcus, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. But you have to trust me. You have to go right now. There was a pause. I could hear voices in the background. Male voices. Speaking in that clicking, humming language I'd heard in the footage. Sarah must have heard it too, because her voice got even smaller. Marcus, what language is that? It's not a language you want to understand. Please, Sarah, please just go. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, okay. I'll go. But Marcus, are you safe? Where are you? I didn't know how to answer that. Was I safe? No. Would I ever be safe again? Probably not. I'm doing what I have to do. I love you. I love Tyler and Madison. Tell them I love them. Tell them Daddy had to do something important. Marcus, stop talking like that. Stop talking like you're not coming back. Sarah, no. You listen to me, Marcus Webb. You come home. You hear me? Whatever this is, whatever's happening, we'll figure it out together. You don't get to just disappear on us. You don't get to give up. You come home. I was about to respond when I heard something in the background. A door opening. Footsteps. Then a voice. Male. Calm. Speaking English now. Mrs. Webb, is that your husband on the phone? We'd very much like to speak with him. Sarah's voice got further away, like she'd pulled the phone from her ear. I'm taking my children to the bathroom. We'll be right back. I don't think that's a good idea right now. I need to use the bathroom. Unless you want to arrest me, you can wait. I heard Sarah moving. Heard Tyler asking what was happening in that scared kid voice that made my heart break. Heard Madison starting to cry. Then Sarah was back, whispering now. Marcus, I'm going. I'm taking them. But you need to tell me what's going on. Who are these people? They're not people, Sarah. That's what I've been trying to tell you. They're not. I heard a sound on her end. A crack, like someone had grabbed the phone out of her hand. Then Sarah's voice again, but different, distant. Marcus, don't. Then nothing. Static. Then a voice I recognized. Sarah's voice, but wrong. Marcus. It was Sarah's voice, but it had that harmonic quality, that double tone, like two Sarahs speaking at exactly the same time. Marcus, I need you to listen to me. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. What did you do to her? We haven't done anything to her. Yet. But that depends on you. That depends on whether you're smart about this. Let her go. Let the kids go. This is between us. They don't know anything. You're right. They don't know anything. And we'd like to keep it that way, which is why we need you to come in. Turn yourself in. Give us the footage. And everyone goes home safe. I was trying to think, trying to process. That wasn't Sarah. Sarah was still there. I'd heard her real voice just seconds ago. So what was this? One of them using her voice? Some kind of technology? I don't believe you. Even if I give you the footage, even if I come in, you're not going to let us walk away from this. You're probably right about that. The voice, Sarah's voice but not Sarah, sounded almost amused. But here's what you need to understand, Marcus. We don't actually need you to cooperate. We have your wife. We have your children. We can make this very unpleasant for them, or we can make it quick and painless. That choice is yours. You're bluffing, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Are we? There was a pause. Then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. Sarah's real voice, screaming. Just for a second, just long enough to know it was real. Then silence. Then that double-toned voice again. Do you want to hear more? We can make this last hours, Marcus. Days even. Or you can come in right now and end this. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to get in my car and drive to Virginia. To turn myself in. To do whatever they wanted if it meant Sarah and the kids would be safe. But I knew. Some rational part of my brain that was still functioning knew that they were lying. That even if I gave them everything, they'd kill us all anyway. Because we'd seen too much. Because we knew too much. Because there was no walking away from this. What do you want? My voice didn't sound like mine. The footage. All copies. Every storage location. Every backup. And you. In person. Within 24 hours. And if I do that, you let them go? We let them continue their lives with no memory of this conversation. No memory of those men in their house. No memory of you disappearing. They'll wake up tomorrow morning thinking you died in a car accident. Tragic. Sudden. Clean. How? Does it matter? We've been doing this for a very long time, Marcus. We know how to handle loose ends. We know how to make problems disappear. The question is whether you want your family to disappear with you, or whether you want them to survive. Changed, but alive. I couldn't form words. Couldn't make my brain work. Then I heard something else. Different voice. Small. Young. Daddy? Madison. They had my 5-year-old daughter. They'd put her on the phone. Daddy, when are you coming home? There are scary men here and Mommy's crying and I don't like it. Baby, Daddy's coming. Daddy's going to fix this. You just say goodbye to Daddy, sweetheart. That double-toned voice again, using Sarah's mouth to talk to my daughter. Tell him you love him. I love you, Daddy. Madison's voice. So innocent. So small. Then the line went dead. I sat there with the phone pressed against my ear, listening to silence, feeling something inside me break completely. They had my family. They were threatening my children, and I had no way to stop them, no way to fight back, no resources, no allies, no options. Just me and a laptop with footage that the world would never see, and a truth that no one would ever believe. I thought about driving to Virginia, thought about turning myself in, thought about trying to negotiate, but I knew it was pointless. They'd already won. They'd won the moment I answered that phone. Maybe they'd won before that. Maybe they'd been 10 steps ahead of me this whole time. I need to stop here for a second because I'm trying to keep it together, but I can't. That was 6 hours ago. That phone call. 6 hours since I heard my daughter's voice. 6 hours since I heard Sarah scream. And I haven't done anything. Haven't called anyone. Haven't turned myself in. Haven't even moved from this motel room, except to get in my car and drive. I don't know where I'm going. Don't have a destination. Just driving because staying still feels like giving up. And I can't give up, even though I've already lost. I keep thinking about what that voice said. About memory alteration. About making my family think I died in an accident. Is that what's happening right now? Are they doing something to Sarah, to Tyler and Madison? Are they erasing me from their lives while I'm out here recording this? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore except that I failed. Failed to protect them. Failed to expose the truth. Failed at everything that mattered. And now I'm recording this message in a rest stop bathroom somewhere in Kentucky or Tennessee. I've lost track, and I can hear sirens getting closer. They found me. Of course they found me. They can probably track this recording as I'm making it. They probably know exactly where I am and exactly what I'm doing, and they're letting me finish because it doesn't matter. Because no one who hears this will believe it. But I'm going to finish it anyway. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. Not because I think it'll change anything. Not because I think you'll believe me, but because someone has to say it. Someone has to put it on record. They're real. These things. These reptilian entities wearing human skin. They're in positions of power. They control governments and corporations and the information infrastructure. They're planning something for 2026, winter solstice, December 21st. Some kind of transition. I don't know what that means. Don't know if it's an invasion or a reveal or something worse, but it's coming, and they've been preparing for it for decades, maybe longer, since at least 1947 if the agreement they mentioned is real. They have facilities like Dulce where they conduct operations. They have 12 territories dividing up the world. They have the ability to alter memory, to make people forget, to erase entire events from human consciousness, and they have the ability to hunt down anyone who discovers them. That's what's happening to me right now. I discovered them. I documented them. I tried to expose them. And now I'm being erased. The sirens are closer now. Maybe a mile away. Maybe less. I don't have much time. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Comment where you're listening to this. Tell me where you are. Because if this recording disappears, if I disappear, I need to know that someone heard it. I need to know that somewhere, someone knows the truth, even if they don't believe it. Even if they think I'm crazy, just know that someone tried to warn you. Someone tried to tell you what's really out there. Don't trust the official story about what happened to me. Don't trust whatever they say in the news or the reports or the investigations. Don't trust the people who look human but don't move quite right. Don't trust the eyes that reflect light when they shouldn't. Pay attention. Watch for patterns. Look for the things that don't add up. And if you see something, if you discover something, be smarter than I was. Don't try to fight them head on. Don't think you can expose them through conventional channels. They own the channels. They control the narrative. The only way to fight them is to spread the truth so quietly, so slowly, so carefully that they don't notice until it's too late. Person to person, face to face. No internet, no digital trail. Just human beings talking to other human beings about what they've seen. That's how you build a resistance. Not with evidence and footage and documentation. With trust and relationship and the kind of communication that can't be monitored or suppressed. I failed at that. I tried to go public, tried to use their systems against them, and they crushed me. But maybe you'll be smarter. Maybe you'll learn from my mistakes. Maybe you'll be the one who actually makes a difference. The sirens are really close now. I can see lights flashing outside the bathroom window. Red and blue. They're here. Shit. Okay. I need to finish this. I need to... Sarah, if you ever hear this, if somehow you remember me, if they didn't erase me completely from your mind, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I brought this down on us. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you and Tyler and Madison. I'm sorry I chose the truth over our safety. I love you.